subject of the delegation has changed substantially. Delegates on the same subject to multiple committees are not permitted. So to folks that are returning to delegate tonight, we kindly ask that you stick to the topic you submitted your delegation on and not to mention any previous delegations. Delegations tonight, you have 5 minutes to present. When you are down to 1 minute, you'll hear a bell. Once you're done, please stay on the line as there might be some questions of clarification for you. And a reminder that the question and response time combined per trustee is 3 minutes. A reminder to trustee colleagues, as stated in our bylaws, not to ask questions that are not questions of clarification. Please only refer to the information you're hearing tonight. So our first delegate tonight is Lynn LeBlanc, co-chair of the French as a Second Language Community Advisory Committee. Welcome, Lynn. Lynn's not here right now, so we'll move on to the next delegate. And if she joins us again near the end, then we'll come back to her. Renee Mohammed, grade 11 student, Alternative Scarborough Education. Welcome. Have a seat. And this is an in-person delegation. So Renee, you have 5 minutes. And when you're down to almost a minute, you hear a little bell, okay?
All right.
Can you please test the mic to make sure we can hear you? Can you come a little closer?
Hello?
Yeah, just bring the mic a little closer to you.
Hello?
Okay, and when you're ready, you can begin.
All right, begin. Oh, did the timer start?
When you start speaking, we'll have the timer going.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So my name is Renee Mohammed. I am a grade 11 student, and my delegation is about optional attendance and out-of-area admissions. I sent an advocate letter to my trustee, Zakir Patel, regarding out-of-area admissions and optional attendance. And in the advocate email, I have mentioned many issues on that policy. Some of them such as there may be a reason why students do not want to attend their homeschool, and also because some students live in a neighborhood that's extremely isolated, such as Scarborough, and like we cannot even go anywhere without taking a bus. So there's very few schools to choose from, and even if there are schools, they would often say that they are closed to out-of-area admissions, and other reasons such as sorry.
You're doing great. We also have water beside you if you'd like some water. Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm trying to remember. Thank you. So I did reach out to Zakir Patel, and he was really helpful. So I do think that the school board should look into that policy and review it. Oh yeah, I remember. Another thing is I do dislike how when you do apply to a school that's out of your area, you would have to wait for the following year in order to attend that school. I do strongly dislike it. And I do understand why this system works the way it is. You would have to wait next year because having thousands of students switch to different schools would overwhelm the system. So I do understand. I'm just wondering if there's any possibility to, like, I guess find some sort of loophole or solution to this, because I am representing hundreds or thousands of students that may be facing the same issue. And again, they may not want to go to their home school for many reasons, such as they might have problems there and they're just stuck and they cannot go to any other school because it's outside their area and they're often closed. I am trying to summarize this because the email was really lengthy. So that would conclude my delegation.
Thank you so much, Raneem. And I also want to offer that if you do have any additional thoughts or an email that you refer to, you can also share that with trustees and we'll always read it too. So you can find our emails online or the same email that you emailed to submit your delegation tonight. You can share your delegation there and we'll read it as well. So if there's anything else you wanted to share.
Yes, I have spoken to somebody here, and he said I could send my advocate email that I sent to Trustee Zakir Patel to all the trustees.
Absolutely. And feel free to share that to our governance staff, and then they can email you back. And we do have a question for you from Trustee Earhart. Please go ahead.
Thanks very much. And hi, Raneem, and thank you very much for coming. I'm the trustee representing Toronto Danforth, and so I'm just a little bit south and west from the southwest start of Scarborough. And the ward that I represent is also largely closed for optional attendance for secondary school for high school students. So I'm just curious if you happen to know, as you were looking, where were there openings for optional attendance close to you?
There wasn't really, there wasn't much. I did check Asian Court Collegiate, but they said they were closed for 2024 or 25 year.
Okay, thank you. So it is sounding like a lot of the East End writ large is closed for optional attendance. I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Earhart. Seeing no further questions online. Thank you, Raneem, for your time. And again, we encourage you to share your delegation, your email with the governance staff so they could share it with the rest of the trustees.
Yeah, it is that, like, some of the schools that I do want to go to, they are far away from Scarborough. But sorry, what is your name? Yeah, Trustee Sarah, she did say a lot of the East End collegiates are also closed to optional attendance.
Thanks so much, Raneem. I appreciate your time today. So next, we'll move on to our next delegate. Marcin Pesky, from Professor, University of Toronto, and they're here to speak on the open data policy. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I wanted to congratulate the delegate for, great for the effort and for the bravery to delegate.
If you can please speak into the mic so that the folks online.
I wanted to congratulate the previous delegate for the bravery and for the effort to delegate on important topic of optional attendance. I want to speak to the Open Data Review Policy motion, and I wanted to thank Trustees Hastings and Pei for introducing this important motion. The Open Data Policy has been adopted in 2018 as a part of a wider movement to bring the principles of open government to Ontario jurisdictions. Its objective, as it is stated, is to support the board's commitment to openness, transparency, and accessibility of information, and public engagement and participation by allowing the public, including students, their parents, guardians, school councils, advisory committees, community members, researchers and scholars, etc., to develop their own analysis and insights based on the TDSB data. I want to emphasize the last phrase. The idea is that the public should be treated seriously as partners who are capable of thinking by themselves, who may have valuable contributions, and whose serious and informed engagement is beneficial to policymaking and governance. The policy as it is written is pretty good. The problem is it is completely ignored by the staff. The policy essentially has two provisions. Section 6.1 says that the board will establish and maintain an inventory of system-wide data and data sets. And then subsequent sections state that the board will gradually post all their data and data sets subject to laws including privacy protection on Open Data Portal. The inventory of all system-wide data set is a necessary first step because without knowing what the board has, they cannot be posting it. This May, I filed a Freedom of Information request asking about the contents of this inventory. It turns out that this inventory does not exist. The response was, At present, there is no formal inventory of system-wide data and data sets within Toronto District School Board. So it means that within 6 years of this policy operating, the staff were not able to fulfill the first key provision of the policy. Without this inventory, the policy does not really make sense. Apart from open data, I wanted to bring up that there is an issue, the lack of this inventory is very concerning in its implications for safe and secure data management. If the board does not know what data sets they have, they cannot really have a comprehensive policy of protecting this data. The second provision of the policy is to post data sets on the open data portal. As recently as September 21st, this year, this website has been essentially dormant with the most recent update from March 2021. Over the last week, the website has been refreshed, likely as a result of Trustee Hastings and Pace motion notice, and various reports and analysis, including financial statements of the board, has been posted. Okay? The problem is that the information that has been posted, which is very valuable and very helpful, is not related to the open data policy. None of this information satisfies the definition of data or data sets from the policy as it's stated in the policy. There is a precise definition of a data set that distinguishes it from analysis or insight or report by the staff. The policy also specifies that data should be released in an open format, which requires it to be machine readable if possible. Typically, it means formats like comma-separated values, JSON, ODF, and not, I emphasize not, PDFs. These are human-readable formats. They cannot be processed by the machine. These are not data sets. The problem is that the open data portal does not contain a single recent data set in the sense of the policy. None of the posted materials is a data set that can be used by the public to develop their own analysis and insights, which was the goal of the policy. All of the documents are PDFs. None of it is released in an open format, machine-readable format in the sense of the policy. Now, I said recent because if you click through many links, you can find a single data set that is posted. It is facilities work order for 2017-18, not even 2018-19, like for some reason this is not there. I don't know how staff can so easily ignore the entire policy for 6 years. I want to add that the lack of transparency is consistent with the very aggressive approach that the board took recently in responding to freedom of information requests. The policy states that it needs to be reviewed in 2 years after adoption, which would be 2020. However, the review has been delayed year after year, possibly because of the COVID. I understand that many TDSB policies are not reviewed according to a schedule. However, in this particular case, the special circumstances that the policy is ignored. So I really encourage you to vote for the review. Here is a choice for you. Either you support a transparent and accessible government, but then make sure that the staff actually is on the same page and obeys the policy that you pass, or you don't, which is also fine, but then you should vote away this policy because otherwise you have a policy that says one thing, it's ignored, that does not look like a good governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcin. Just give us a moment. We'll see if there are any questions for you. Trustee Pei, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, thank you for the delegation, Professor Paskey. I have a question to ask for clarification. You said something is very concerning to me. That is, the board response basically to you freedom information request that there's no such database exist.
Can you repeat it?
So regarding the board response to you freedom information request, they're virtually saying there's no such database exists.
I said that the board staff became very aggressive over the last 2 years in responding to freedom of information requests. And I can compare because 2 years ago, yes, you might remember, I was, maybe you won't remember, I was delegating on the point of the lottery and I asked the staff for some data, including the race and ethnic characteristics of applicants and admitted students to schools before lottery. And the staff was very generous with the data. I had to pay for it, but it was possible. Now, 2 years later, I asked for the same data set. After the lottery, the staff refused. Despite the only thing that was changed is that this data should be easier for the staff to collect because the admissions process is right now centralized. I have many examples like this. Talking about this data set, I appealed this decision by the staff. In the process of the appeal, the staff has reported to the Office of the Information and Privacy, the commissioner, that the request, to satisfy my request, they would have to combine two data sets, the census and the admission data. And that's impossible, it hasn't been done. At the same time, the staff was working on a report for the trustee board where this particular data sets have been combined. And in fact, in this report, the staff told you that the information they are providing to you, which is related to the information I'm seeking, but not the same, has been based on combining those two data sets. Now, either the data sets were combined or not, one of them has to be false. So either they made false statements to you or they made false statements to the commissioner. In another appeal that I have, the staff has, I requested information about the information that can be extracted according to the act, can be extracted using standard computer software and skills that are present in the institution. I demonstrated to the staff that the information that I'm asking can be extracted using basic Microsoft Excel. That's a spreadsheet software that is used in every single office on this planet. The staff said that they don't know Excel.
Thank you. Thank you for the delegation.
Thank you, Trustee Pei. Seeing no further questions, Trustee Earhart, can I pass the chair to you for a moment? Can I pass the chair to you for a moment?
Certainly.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just have one quick question of clarification. You mentioned two data sets. One was a census. What was the second one?
The admission data. So to get the information about the racial characteristics, this is not on the application. Students do not report what is their race or ethnicity. So to get information about the racial characteristics, the staff needs to combine those two data sets. And in the report that was presented to you, they did this process. It's not a difficult process. It's a simple database operation. But in appeal to the Information and Privacy Commissioner, they said that this cannot be done, which I find very surprising, concerning, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Earhart. I'll take the chair back. Seeing no further questions, thank you, Marsan, for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll go to this parent, and then I'll come back to them. Oh, for this. Okay. Up next, we have our next delegate who's here to speak on the open data policy, Michael Danishevsky. Welcome, Michael. Michael, if you can hear us, if you could press *6, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, we can, and we ask that if you can just turn down the volume on the live stream, then we won't hear the feedback.
Right. Okay, thank you. Hello, trustees and staff. I'm here today to address TDSB's commitment to open data, specifically the absence of data sets on the board's open data portal. While protecting individual student privacy is paramount, the availability of anonymized aggregate data at the school level should still be a priority. The current lack of such data sets contradicts the requirements of the open data motion passed by this board, which called for greater transparency and community engagement. So what exactly is a data set? A data set is just a structured collection of information that can be analyzed and interpreted. That's it. In education, a school level data set might include average student performance. It could be attendance rates. It could be data on school facilities and required repairs, school safety incidents. One example actually came in this meeting, which was the optional attendance. So instead of the student that presented that needed to contact individual schools or trustees specifically asking which schools have optional attendance availability, the whole point is that this information could and should be part of a data set that is accessible on the website. These data sets can be anonymized to protect privacy while still providing meaningful insights for parents, researchers, and the community. Despite the open data motion, TDSB's portal lacks the required data sets. Instead, it offers static reports and summaries which prevent users from comparing or analyzing data across schools or over time. This is not just a missed opportunity, it violates the letter of the open data policy. The board committed to posting this data, and as long as it remains in the possession, it is their responsibility to make it accessible. In contrast, both the Ontario Open Data Portal and the City of Toronto Open Data Portal demonstrate how school-level data can be responsibly shared. Ontario's portal offers data sets like EQAO results and school enrollment, while City of Toronto's portal includes data on school locations and zoning. These examples show it is entirely possible to share data responsibly without compromising privacy. Publishing school-level data sets is about more than transparency. It empowers communities to improve educational outcomes. By failing to post these data sets, TDSB is not upholding its commitment to transparency, nor is it enabling the community to fully engage in improving education. TDSB should immediately comply with this open data motion by publishing the required school-level data. Doing so will foster transparency and empower stakeholders to make informed decisions that can help improve the educational experience for all students. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Please stay on the line. I'm just going to see if there are any questions of clarification for you. Trustee Pei, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I want to ask, the delegates, Michael, a clarification questions. Thank you, Michael, for delegation. You said that this is open data policy is so crucial to the board, ensuring transparency and accountability. Could you clarify that or give us some examples?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Trustee Pei. So the concerning aspect to me is that even though the website exists about open data, and it has a beautiful logo at the top, I love it, but beyond that, it has absolutely no information that can be processed automatically. Now, the issue that I can't possibly make sense out of is that some of that data is already public. Some of the data is actually published by other institutions like the City of Toronto, the Province of Ontario. A lot of it is available on Google. How is it possible, or why does it make sense for people who want to get information about our school board to try to scrape that data from other sources? That just doesn't make sense to me. I strongly believe that the goal should be to publish as much as possible information internally so that people can see exactly what's going on. And in addition to that, to track the progress of that information across time, across schools, across any kind of a division that's available. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. My second question would be, you mentioned that you would prefer, say, school-level data set, including in our open data platform. Why is the school-level database is so important to us?
So, I mean, in an ideal world, obviously I want data as detailed as possible, but we live in a world where privacy is important, and I fully recognize that. And I think there has to be a balance of point at which the data is aggregated. I believe school is an appropriate level at which the data can be aggregated, because what that allows the board to do is to provide information that is still useful, that is still meaningful, that is still actionable, yet at the same time, it does not expose any individual student or teacher or staff or anything that can potentially point to an individual person, which must be addressed. So I believe a lot of the stats that can and should be available at a school level.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your delegation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Seeing no further questions, I'd like to thank you for your time today and for delegating to us.
Thank you. Bye.
Our next delegation for tonight is by Anurag Singhal, the Toronto Asian Parents Association. Welcome, Anurag. If you press *6, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. And thanks again to give me this opportunity. My name is Anurag, and I represent the Toronto Asian Parents Association. And I would like to highlight the TDSB information that should be more transparent and visible to the parents. What I mean by that is that TDSB can draw some kind of inspiration from the successful adaptation, such as City of Toronto and provinces or Province of Ontario. Also, by making data more accessible, TDSB can demonstrate its commitment and accountability and build more trust. Also, I see that currently the policy is not being upheld. For example, there is no inventory of system-wide data or data sets. Also, I see that there's a lack of inventory, which prevents TDSB from making informed decisions. So I would say like the current open data portal has been dormant since 24, sometime in from September 2024. Also, the portal does not have any kind of data sets, and the portal do have the analysis. I mean, I do recognize that the portal does have the analysis, the infographics and reports, but does not have the data set. And when I use the word data set, what I mean is it's an organized collection of data that should be posted in some kind of an open format. By saying the open data policy, I would really mean that we should be able to, an individual should be able to download it in a proper format, which is currently absent. Also, I believe like the open data policy is long overdue for a review, and I would urge TDSB to consider the development of a comprehensive data retention policy as well. I do respect the privacy of the data. However, it would be great if we can segregate the data and make it transparent and make it available to the individuals. Otherwise, like right now, people like an individual is just lost, and we don't see any kind of information when it is required. So without any kind of comprehensive inventory of this data, the board will not be able to make a better decision, which will be helpful not only for the TDSB, but also for the other associations which are associated with the TDSB, for the respective schools and the parents itself. So I should feel that the policy is necessary, an open policy and a data which is available to individuals is necessary and relevant, in line with the legal and ethical consideration. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anurag. Just give us a moment. We'll see if there are any questions of clarification for you. Trustee Pei, please go ahead.
Thank you, Anurag, for your delegation. I have a clarification questions. You said the open database is very important for the TDSB trustee to make the decision. And why I think is also important for the parents to know that data set.
Sorry, what's the second part?
Oh, the second part is why you think the parents of TDSB community also you feel it's very important for them to know the data set.
Okay, so as I said in the beginning, like if we talk about the other successful adaptations which have been done by City of Toronto and Province of Ontario, when I talk about the Asian parent, or I mean the parents, or that will make it more transparent. That will make it more available. Right now, we do not see any of that information on the TDSB site. And as I said, like whatever data is present there, it is quite obsolete because it has been there since like I believe like that the last time it was updated was long back. We do not have it updated for a long time now. Any kind TDSB does collect a lot of data. I know that, right? I mean, like, they do collect data from the parents, from the students, but whatever is the relevant information, keeping aside the privacy, which I really respect, they can segregate that information and can keep it in a proper open data format, whether it's a parent or a trustee or any other individual who is directly or indirectly linked with the TDSB, they should be able to, go and access that information on the TDSB website. We all have the right to go and see what's going on if we want some kind of data.
Thank you very much for your answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Anurag. Seeing no further questions, I'd like to thank you for your time today.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ragini Sharma, Canadian Organization for Hindu Heritage Education, and they're here to speak on the open data policy. Hi, Ragini, can you hear us?
Hello, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So you have 5 minutes, and we ask once your time is up to please stay on the line as there might be some questions of clarification for you.
Thank you, Yalini. Good afternoon. Thank you, trustees, for giving me this opportunity today to speak on TDSB's open data policy. I appreciate Trustee Hastings and Trustee Pei for raising this important matter to the board and senior staff. I read that the open data policy, which was adopted in 2018, and I applaud its twin objectives. One, to support the board's commitment to openness, transparency, and accessibility of information. And two, public engagement and participation by allowing the public, including students and their parents, guardians, school councils, advisory committees, community members, researchers, and scholars, etc., to develop their own analysis and insights based on the TDSB data. This last phrase really hit home for me as an independent researcher involved in advocacy work in the Hindu community. I believe that as community stakeholder, I should have the opportunity to examine TDSB data sets and be able to engage in an informed way to contribute by educating my community and offering policy-making recommendations to the TDSB board. Even comment on matters that are, in my opinion, being ignored or missed. From what I saw, there is an absence of data sets being posted on the board's portal. And this has been an issue since its inception. This is really troubling to me. The availability of anonymized, aggregated data sets to the public while protecting the confidentiality of students needs to be prioritized by the board. As stated in the policy, parents and community members would like to be able, they have been given the right by this policy to be able to independently review data sets on topics ranging from student performance, safety incidents, bullying cases, expulsion of students, race and ethnic data on staff and students. For example, I would like to know how many students identified as Dalits and Adivasis in the recent student census. By failing to make these data sets available, the TDSB is not living up to its open data policy, its own policy, which aims to uphold transparency and allowing the community to fully engage in their children's education. For example, I have personally delegated, and many parents delegated, on the lottery process of admissions to specialized programs. We're interested to look at the lottery-related data on how many applicants were made to each program, how many were accepted, what was the probability of winning the lottery, and so on. While we appreciate staff reports posted, we would like to be able to do our own research. For example, a number of empty seats in specialized programs. It's really concerning to me that some of this data may not even be collected, which is a separate issue. I urge you and all trustees to support this motion, to review this policy and make the changes to restore the letter and spirit of this important policy on transparency and accountability. It's a matter of urgency, a matter of regaining the public's trust in this publicly funded school system. Thank you for listening, and I hope that this motion will be supported by all trustees because we hold each one of you accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, and we're looking around. Trustee Pei, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I want to thank Ragini for such a wonderful delegation. I have a question for you, Ragini, just for clarification.
Yes.
So why you think by implementing this open data policy, the board would empower public engagement?
Data is key. Whenever the parents would like to understand what's happening, we can, of course, look at staff reports. But, parents are educated. Parents are deeply concerned and interested in seeing for themselves. They want to do their own research. And it's clear that the TDSB would like to engage, to allow parents and researchers and scholars to engage with the data. So what is the point of having a policy and then not implementing it and allowing the public to do what they intend and clearly say that they intend to provide? So it's a matter of being, compliant with your own policy. It's deeply troubling that as a parent, as a community stakeholder, there is no data set. It's been very frustrating. And you can hear the frustration when we come to the board meetings to delegate and we hear you and other trustees ask questions. And, it seems like you are also, as trustees, not able to look at this data, which is like pretty unbelievable. I mean, as public, we can't, but as trustees, you cannot do your own independent research. I don't know how trustees function without having access to data, let alone, we as public members. So I think it's really, really critical that this matter be clarified and reviewed. And, I understand staff issues are there, but I think Marcin said, either you have this policy and provide the data sets, or you then strike down this policy and just tell us, well, we don't have the staff to do this work and, we're just going to throw it out. But I think we're here to hold the board responsible and accountable for providing information that they have said they will provide. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your delegation.
Thank you for the opportunity. Best wishes.
Seeing no further questions, thank you, Ragini, for your time today. And we'll move on to our final delegate for, oh, sorry, my apologies, not our final. Our second last delegate for tonight, Carl Chen from the Toronto Asian Parents Association. Carl, can you hear us? If you press *6, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Can you just speak up a little louder so we can hear
Hello?
you in the boardroom?
Okay, so how about now?
Yep, that's good. You have 5 minutes, and when you're ready, please begin.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Pei, for inviting me to this delegation. Today, I will focus on the transparency issue. So introduce myself a little bit. I coach tennis for a couple of summers already. In terms of transparency, as a coach, I use video to coach. Show the students what's your performance from beginning of this class. And then a lot of short videos to record the performance, the improvements, something need to improve, and the communication between me and my student. By the end of that hour, a lot of data, right? A lot of beautiful data, like a vivid data. So students feel very transparent to themselves, no? So this is, I use transparency to improve the training education, make it really transparent, feel good, and we can feel what we need to improve, where is the difficulty. Okay, talk about TDSB, we have 240,000 students, 40,000 teachers, and of course, 22 trustees. We are all on the same map, which is, the map is about where we are now and where we are going to. The map is about the data, the rules, everyday activity, teaching, going to school, right? So it's very important. I want to share one story. One day, I was talking to the teacher of my daughter. That was June. And the second time was September. We talked twice about that. How do you feel the lottery system, after the lottery system started, how do you feel? Because the teacher has been working for TDSB for 16 years. I don't want to share the name because she does not feel comfortable. That means it's a problem because a teacher and the parents communicate to each other. The teacher feel, it's not that free to say whatever she wants to say. Itself, it's a problem, right? So TDSB should give the teachers right and the parents right to say whatever they want to say based on the fact. So itself is a problem right now, right? So the teachers, they know the problem. They know what is good, what is not that good. So parents, they have to work every day. So when parents talk to teacher, the teacher is the information source. But now that information source is kind of, not free, to what I mean. So in terms of transparency, include opinion and data. At this time, when I talk to the teacher, data is not available. A lot of some other people already talk about data is not available, and also opinion is not that freestyle. It's kind of feel nervous. So that's my point. So we need to improve the transparency between parents and the teacher. Right now, it's about this on this meeting is very good. So I'm so glad to share my experience and opinion to trustees. This is a very good opportunity. Yeah, that's what I want to say. So we have to improve the communication between the parents and the teachers, all the teachers and parents. We're on the same map. We need to know what's going on, and we need on the same page, go to the same goal. We share the same goal. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Please stay on the line. We'll see if there are any questions of clarification for you. Seeing none.
Okay.
Thank you for your time today. And now we're going to go back to the start of the list. Lynn LeBlanc, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Hi,
Hello.
Lynn. Hi, Lynn. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to speak. Once you're down to a minute left, you hear a little bell. And at the end, we ask you to please stay on the line as there might be some questions of clarification for you.
Okay, thank you so much.
It's a little, you sound a little muffled. If you can just speak a little louder, we can hear you better in the boardroom.
Is this better? Is this better?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon on behalf of the FSL-CAC with regards to our review. The committee's mandate is to consult with and advise the board on French as a second language matters. This partnership of trustees, staff, and parents has resulted in collaborations on a wide range of topics that focused on our shared efforts to improve outcomes for all students. The review took place over the previous multi-year strategic plan, where our committee addressed best practices to transform student learning in math, literacy, early years pathways, special education, by inviting guest speakers and thought leaders to speak to and engage with our committee members. We work to ensure that schools offer a wide range of programming that reflects the voices, choices, abilities, identities, and experiences of students. We discussed methods in which new sites could tap into resources, such as books and virtual libraries, to ensure that these resources were top of mind for parents, guardians, and caregivers, school councils, and parent groups. We reviewed policies, procedures, and practices to ensure that they promote equity, inclusion, and human rights practices and enhance learning opportunities for all students. We did this by participating in area reviews where we were able to highlight challenges and develop solutions for families impacted, build strong relationship and partnership within our school communities to support student learning and well-being through our e-newsletter subscribers that include parent, caregiver, and guardians, teachers, trustees, and school councils. These e-newsletters are regularly sent 3 times a year in December, March, and June, highlighting programs available to students, local and virtual events, and new supports available to students by TDSB. We continue to strengthen relationships and build partnerships among students, staff, parents, caregivers, and guardians, and communities to support student needs and improve learning and well-being by attending school council meetings as our own, as well as any that we may have been invited to, and answering questions from parents through our email and also at the park. As a committee, we were pleased to have participated with community engagement aspects within the TDSB over the last several years, including most recently with the multi-year strategic plan consultation. It proved to be a great opportunity for our members to ask specifics regarding key areas noted within the plan. Our mandate aligns with the TDSB's current or renewed multi-year strategic plan, and with parents, caregivers, guardians focus on student achievement and improved outcomes for all students. Our mandate aligns with the actions taken and decisions made over the course of the last few years, including having the French review as a standing item on our agenda, such that we could note the progress of our committee's recommendations, inviting guest speakers to address teacher shortages and what several groups, including OSFA, are working on to improve the situation, a focus on special education supports available through invited guests, both from TDSB and outside, topics for our e-newsletters that are engaging and cover a breadth of areas of interest for parents, caregivers, guardians, students, and student councils, and school councils, The FSL-CAC produces a newsletter that is issued prior to the winter break, March break, and summer break, all great opportunities for parents to tap into, as well as standalone messages as required throughout the year, time-sensitive information for parents, registrations, for example, or educational programs. As a committee, the FSL-CAC is committed to ensuring parent, guardian, caregiver participation from across the TDSB by reaching out to trustees. You may have received our emailed letter regarding hosting elections, inviting parents to attend FSL-CAC meetings, and signing up to our e-newsletter through TDSB conferences, through our e-newsletter, and at the park as well. FSL-CAC has presented at TDSB conferences, including PIAC and Parents as Partners, We've also set up booths to answer questions from attendees and promote French and language programs. Our membership meets regularly to discuss agenda items and how to best approach key topics of interest for our membership reflection and post-meeting debriefs. We also coordinate 2 in-person meetings a year. The members are welcomed to the first one, an onboarding session, usually in November or early December, geared towards providing insight into the committee's role and mandate and answering any questions they may have from new members. And in March, to discuss the focus of the remainder of the year's meetings. Also a great way for all of us to get to know each other and brainstorm and come up with great ideas for topics that we believe the parents are most interested in from across the TDSB. At the FSL-CAC, the annual general meeting in June 2024, the committee passed recommendations for consideration by the Board of Trustees to align its name and mandate with the 2024-2028 multi-year strategic plan. The proposed update to its name is French Student Achievement Community Advisory Committee. This name would center the community's work on students and their achievement in core and immersion French programs. It removes second language, as has been done by the TDSB French department, as it is more inclusive of multilingual language learners for whom French is a third or an additional language. Our community looks forward to continuing to work in partnership alongside trustees, staff, and parents, caregivers, and guardians on a wide range of topics that focus on our shared efforts to improve outcomes for all students. Thank you for your time, and I hope to have the opportunity to speak with you again on French matters at the TDSB. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Just give us a second. I'm going to see if there are any questions for you.
Great, thank you.
Seeing none, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you to all our delegates for their time today. You've provided us with a lot to reflect on as we go through the agenda tonight. Now we're going to move on to staff reports. The first report is the Early Years Community Advisory Committee review process, and I'll pass it over to Associate Director Salmon.
Test. Thank you, and through the chair. The Community Advisory Committee Board of Trustees Governance Procedure, PR 741, and the CAC Operational Procedure, PR 742, were approved at the January 31st, 2024 Board of Trustees meeting. PR 741 is a governance procedure that includes provisions that pertain to the authority and responsibility of the Board of Trustees and therefore requires board approval. The sections within the procedure govern the establishment and dissolution of CACs, approval and amendments of CAC terms of reference, reporting to the board, as well as provisions related to the roles and responsibilities of individual trustees sitting at CACs as members. In addition, the board on May 25th, 2022, directed staff to review the following 6 CACs and thereafter the review of all CACs every 3-year term. The following CACs were scheduled for review: the Alternative Schools Community Advisory, Community Use of Schools Community Advisory, Early Years Community Advisory, the Environmental Sustainability, Equity Policy, and French as a Second Language Community Advisory. The above 6 CACs are to be reviewed by the Board of Trustees in the 24-25 school year. This evening, staff is pleased to bring before this committee the first 3 CACs to go through the review process, with the expectation that the remaining 3 will be brought forward to committee later this school year. The following CACs will be presented this evening: the Early Years Community Advisory Committee, Environmental Sustainability Committee, French as a Second Language Community Advisory. The review template that was used was developed to support the review process by capturing the salient commonalities of operations, presenting a picture of their performance, and allowing for some consistency across CACs with varied mandates, terms of reference, and also operations. The review process entailed communication with CACs with respect to direct communication with the senior resource person, a review template that was shared by the senior resource person to the CAC co-chairs, and also a review template that was completed by the CAC committee's senior resource person in consultation with the CAC co-chairs. The report that is presented by the or by the senior resource person will be presented this evening for the 3 committees that have been outlined for decision. Trustees will have the opportunity to decide for each CAC reviewed whether to reestablish the committee or to discharge the committee at the next organizational board meeting that takes place in November. Some of the key considerations trustee may utilize in this decision-making may include the length of the CAC has been in operation, the achievement of its particular mandate as outlined by the actual report, recommendations that have been made to the Board of Trustees by the committee, the alignment of the mandate with the board's multi-year strategic plan, either the past one or the present one, and the overlap of the CAC mandate with other CAC's ministry or director work plan. At the end of the day, part of what the assessment is really trying to get at is the effectiveness of the operation of the individual CACs. Pending the direction of the board, staff will implement direction in alignment with the CAC and the Board of Trustees based on the various policies that were outlined, PR 741 and PR 742. I will ask that the senior leader for each of the committees being reviewed to provide a brief overview of the specific CAC. Trustees will have the opportunity to ask questions about the CAC at the end of all presentations. Because this is a new process, we know the trustees may have questions. We certainly welcome and appreciate the contributions of Michelle Monroe, the coordinator for parent, caregiver, guardian, and community engagement, to support us as we engage in this new process. So I also want to acknowledge Michelle's work in being able to bring us to this particular point. At this point, I will call on the first presentation from Cynthia Grunman, the Senior Policy Advisor and Manager for the Early Years, to speak to the Early Years Community Advisory Committee report. Cynthia, and she's online.
Great, thank you, Audley. Through the chair, the Early Years Community Advisory Committee was established in 2016 and has been actively operating as a CAC for almost 8 years now. This committee was initially established, as outlined in the original terms of reference, to provide advice to the board on matters concerning the implementation of the ministry's Ontario Early Years Policy Framework, and to identify issues of broad community interest concerning early years programs for consideration of the board and staff. It was also established to suggest improvements to the TDSB early years policy, to continue to advise on integrated service delivery within an early years framework, and to consider the work of other initiatives within the board as they impact on early years, like full-day kindergarten, special education, model schools, etc. For the last 2 years, the committee has met regularly 4 times a year, and happy to report that full quorum was achieved at each meeting. I'll share that since its establishment, in fact, it's met quorum at every meeting with the exception of 1 meeting in 2019 before the pandemic hit. This committee is engaged in work that aligns with the multi-year strategic plan and other early years programming and priorities of the board. In the last 2 years specifically, this committee has provided feedback and advice on policies like the out-of-area admissions policy, on the multi-year strategic plan, on childcare umbrella lease agreement revisions and other lease-related aspects affecting childcares, on transitions to kindergarten, and shared professional learning opportunities, to name a few. This committee's also advocated for and supported processes to provide Wi-Fi access for childcare partners working in TDSB schools. And most recently, some of you may recall that following important discussions related to school safety and procedures with childcares, EAC moved forward and the board approved the recommendation that childcare centers located in schools be invited to join in schools caring and safe schools committees as members. I'll conclude by sharing that the committee members have been and continue to be engaged. They're committed to supporting the important early years work within and across our school board and the communities we serve. And they certainly recognize the need for an updated terms of reference to more accurately reflect the changing sectoral landscape, priorities, and demands. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. I will now ask System Superintendent Ronnie Felson to speak with respect to the French as a Second Language Community Advisory Committee.
Good evening, trustees. Before you this evening is the French as a Second Language Community Advisory Review Report. Similar to my colleague in early years, this report follows the same format and the same decision is being put before you. That is, that the FSL-CAC be reestablished at the organizational meeting in November, or that the FSL-CAC be discharged at the organizational meeting in November. The FSL-CAC has been operating since September 2005, and the mandate is to consult with and advise the board on French as a second language matters. As a board community advisory committee, the FSLAC will contribute to the work of trustees and staff. This partnership of trustees, staff, and parents will foster excellence and growth in FSL programs at the board. For the last 2 years, the committee has had regular meetings and met quorum almost all of the time. They have supported the implementation of the French review, which took place in 2017-2018, and continues to produce a newsletter 3 times per year and provide information to parents at TDSB events and conferences, including the PIAC conference and the Parents as Partners conference. Although there have been no motions or policy recommendations presented to the Board of Trustees, the committee continues to focus on student achievement in French programs, providing feedback and advice. In fact, as indicated in the report before you and by the delegate this evening, the FSL-CAC annual general meeting in June, the committee passed recommendations for consideration by the Board of Trustees to align its name and mandate with the 24 to 2028 multi-year strategic plan, should the Board of Trustees decide to reestablish this community advisory committee. The proposed update to its name being recommended is French Student Achievement Community Advisory Committee. This name would center the committee's work on students and their achievement in core and immersion French programs. It removes second language, as has been done by the TDSB French department, as it is more inclusive of multilingual language learners for whom French is a third or an additional language. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions after the next report.
Thank you, Ronnie. The last presentation for the evening is from Senior Manager Richard Christie for the Environmental Sustainability Community Advisory Committee. Richard?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll keep my comments brief in the interest of time. So the ESAC was formed through a recommendation to the board in its 2010 Climate Action Plan. So this was one of the outcomes of that really important plan approved by the board back in 2010 and has been meeting since that time. The committee maintains very good membership and is engaged in work that aligns with the multi-year strategic plan and programming priorities of the board. The committee holds regular meetings with very good attendance and has made lots of important contributions, including it has brought motions forward to board. And now that the staff are required to report to the trustees annually on a climate action plan, the ESAC, I think, plays a very important role in terms of providing feedback to staff, helping to provide, I think, important information and important input on direction and feedback in terms of the board's annual climate action plan. So I'll keep my comments to there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christie. So once again, part of the decision-making for the board is to make a determination for each of the individual CACs that are being reviewed with respect to whether or not they will be reestablished or discharged based on the direction that's provided by trustees. We welcome any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Director Salmon, Senior Policy Advisor Gunman, System Superintendent Felsen, and Senior Manager Christie. Trustees, so just so you understand from a procedure point of view, though we heard on all three reports right now, we're going to vote on each one individually, and a trustee will need to make a motion on whether to establish or disband that committee. So we'll begin with 5.1, Early Years Community Advisory Committee. So if there are any questions or comments. Trustee Arts, please go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. My questions are actually more general for the whole process. These were presented as individual reports, but this is the first time we're seeing the CAC review process being implemented. So I will just say up front that I thought that there would be more insight, I guess. Sorry. I thought that there would be more insight and as opposed to just, reading a form that the CACs filled out. I don't know what the committee is going to discuss from here. There's a lot of questions. Some of them are great in the review process, I think. And sorry, I just want to call up the list in front of me here. But a few of the questions I'm a little concerned about. Later, it says, like question 34 says, list the core accomplishments of the CAC. And then going back 2 years. These are volunteer committees. I'm like, each committee has different mandates and things, but these are either organizational volunteers or or community volunteers coming to the table. I don't actually think it's reasonable for us to expect that they would have core accomplishments in their mandate. All of them, their mandate is to advise the board as opposed to being working groups. So I'm happy that some of the committees were able to put things in there, but I don't want to give committees the impression that that we're expecting accomplishments, and it may be just that this kind of question needs different wording. So core accomplishment sounds like we're asking them to do work, and we've many times said, this is not what we expect of our CICs. Actually, question 13 says outline work done, and this has been, for 6 years now for me, an ongoing conversation on that. We don't expect work of our CICs or even the staff supporting the CICs because these are committees of the board and they're there to advise us. And it's really up to trustees to be the ones attending and, working at the committees and helping them, and getting the feedback from them. So there's a lot of information here. And I don't know, I'm at this point, I'm not on this committee, so I won't be voting on this tonight, obviously. So, but I was kind of expecting a little bit more of an approach that is the committee meeting its mandate? Is it actually achieving quorum? Does it overlap with other committees? Because we have 10 CACs and 2 advisory committees, and there is overlap in mandates. How do we, the bigger picture of how do we make them work best for us and for them as community members? So I don't know. These are my concerns right now with what's in front of me.
Thank you for those comments, and through the chair, I will ask Ms. Monroe to just make a comment with respect to the approach that has been taken around the community advisory in this particular review. Ms. Monroe?
Thank you, Associate Director Simon. Good evening, everyone. Michelle Monroe here. Pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you for the question, Trustee Arts. In coming up with the format to review, what we wanted to do in light of the consultation that we had with trustees, CACs, senior staff around how we go about doing the review was ensuring that, one, we were honoring the voice of the Community Advisory Committee members themselves, hence why we thought best to utilize their perception as to how they are operating. So as you note, each year CACs provide the board with an annual report and a self-evaluation. We started that a number of years intentionally, so you could begin to get a sense as to how your committees were actually operating and how they were doing their work. So we really wanted to honor their voices, which is why some of the sections of the review template actually entailed some of those same questions that were in their review, which allowed staff to hear from CACs in terms of how they believe they were operating in alignment to their mandate. The section you spoke specifically in terms of their core accomplishments, that was to provide space to honor what we heard. What we heard during the consultations around how we go about doing this review from CACs themselves was, yes, there's a clear understanding that their mandate is to advise the board. And in so doing it, there are other areas of things that they end up doing. So, for example, you heard earlier from the delegation of FSL-CAC where they participated in a number of your consultations. They participated in a number of board-related conferences in bringing forth their mandate forward in those areas. And so what they wanted to ensure was that our review provided the space to acknowledge that. So that section was really for the opportunity for the CACs to say, yes, we have advised the board. We have advised the board on these key areas, these key items during this particular time. In addition to that, we also attended or presented here. We participated in these number of consultations that were board held. And so we wanted to provide the space for that to come through. The overall review form, what we really tried to do was help you paint a picture for 10 advisory committees that do have different mandates, but they share some core commonalities. That core commonality is their mandate is to advise you. And so in order for them to do that, the thought was, well, if they are a committee, we need to know whether they're meeting regularly. And we need to know if there's a consistent membership. And we need to know if they're aligning with some of your priorities to be able to advise you accordingly. We needed to know if their membership, if they're functioning effectively. Those are things that contributes as to whether the committee is actually in a position to advise you. And also, are they providing you advice? And how often are they providing that advice and we wanted to provide the space to do that within the review, which is why the review was designed the way it was, to give you as much information as we could without providing you with a plethora of stuff that would sort of tie up the process. I'll turn this back over to you, Associate Director, and answer any further questions.
Thank you, and back to the floor.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I just have one more question. And that's, okay, so I get that. So most of these questions, I think, answer what Ms. Monroe outlined. So, you know, it's kind of what I expected. So what I'd like to understand is if the committee members move to continue, if they're moving to continue all of the CACs, what then happens with this information that's been collected in this review? What are the next steps? Because definitely there's going to be variation in, so let's just pick quorum. We have a committee, you know, we have committees that we believe, you know, their mandate's important, they can provide feedback, but they're obviously having membership issues. One of the questions I saw, do members treat each other with respect? And the answer was not really that positive. You know, if they're having trouble meeting quorum, they're having trouble, you know, managing interactions. What is now going to happen with that information if the committee is to continue?
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, I think part of what this is an opportunity for us to, if the board provides a decision that the committee will continue, we have the opportunity to address any of those particular concerns. Even this evening, there was one suggestion with respect to an altercation to the change to the name. Something as like that would then be able to be formalized as part of this process. The expectation is that as we go forward over the course of the 3-year mandate, that we will be able to review all committees in order to be able to provide subtle changes and in order to better address whatever the needs of the Board of Trustees is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Arts. Trustee Sriskandarajah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I'm just a bit confused what is happening. So please bear with me. Through you, Madam Chair. So today, are we deciding on the two options that are in front of us, which is either to continue with the advisory committees or disband them? Is that the two options in front of us?
So through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, just so for the first one, just talking about early years because it's on the screen, what's staff's suggestion or recommendation?
So through the chair, part of staff's role has been to provide you with the information based on the self-evaluation and the information that has been provided in consultation with the senior staff lead. Each of the leads at this point in time have been very intentional in not providing you with a recommendation, but providing you with the information such that trustees are able to make a decision.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I feel really uncomfortable at this moment to make this decision because I haven't attended one of, the early years committee, and I feel it's such a weighty decision without much conversation around this table, other than the delegations that I've heard, which were very limited. So I do worry about whether people know that this is on the table. And I don't have the information in front of me. I haven't attended. So I feel it would be just very irresponsible of me to make this decision without more conversations. I'm not saying that we keep all the committees because I know in the past we have removed a few committees because they weren't perhaps getting the numbers or whatever our criteria were at that point. But this to me just seems a very big decision for someone who hasn't attended, and I don't think that would be fair to the people who do the work on the committee without more conversation. So if there's any trustees who would like to share their experiences, I would really appreciate it, because I think once a committee is gone, it's incredibly difficult to bring it back. So, I don't want to make a decision, that has such far-reaching implications. So, yes, if there's anyone who can share their experiences, I would really appreciate that.
Thank you, Trustee Sriskandarajah. Trustee Patel, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is just a question of clarification. I'm not part of GPC, but I want to conclude on what Anu started. Is this a staff recommendation that we have to close down the committees, or it's a recommendation from the stakeholders?
So thank you. Through the chair, no, that is not staff's recommendation to close down. This is just part of the procedures that we brought forward in January of 2024 with respect to the two CAC reports. One was governance and one was operational. And so in those, we outlined the parameters for a review of each of the CACs. And this is that particular review. It's the first time through it, and we certainly understand the trepidation the trustees are going through with respect to that and this decision-making. I'm wondering if Coordinator Ms. Monroe would like to comment with respect to staff's recommendation piece.
Thank you, Associate Director Salmon, through you, the chair. The procedure approved by the board outlined the review process for the community advisory committees. And just to echo Associate Director Salmon, it is a fairly new process for the Toronto District School Board. And the intent is these are community advisory committees of the board. So what staff is able to do is to collect as much information as we can on the operations of your committee to enable you to make that decision. In just response briefly to the comments earlier, was we are aware that not every trustee sits on every advisory committee, and also that not all trustees sit on all committees. And this is why we wanted to find a way to provide you as much information as we can in relating to your committees. So you will get a sense as to who they are and how they've been operating and how they've been working, because we understand the complexity of the decision that's before you and what we're asking to do. And just a last comment on this, the thought about the importance of the review was that as you were looking at how these communities, advisory committees have been operating over the number of years, we have had committees that were removed, but we've never had a renewal process for you around these committees. And the thought was at the time during the CAC review consultations was that there should be an opportunity for you as a board to get an opportunity to see how the CACs are operating. Are they meeting their mandates? But most importantly, are they effectively advising you based on their mandates? And so a way to do that was to ensure that every period that there's a period set where they're actually being reviewed, and that they're actually sharing and you're getting information as to their status and their operations. And so what we try to do as staff is provide as much information as we can about those committees, recognizing that not all trustees sit on all CACs. Back to you, Associate Salmon.
Back to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Director, and thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Trustee Patel. Trustee Earhart, please go ahead.
Thanks very much. I will say, just based on this discussion, I'll admit very frankly, I'd been hoping that we get something that would give us some recommendations over the overlaps as well, and where there may be benefit to combining. I had been hoping for more fulsome recommendations to come from that. I'll be very honest. I would be very keen to add some emerging committees, like a clean air committee, like the Waterloo District School Board has, something that I know has been called for our board that we're unable to do because of the limit of 10. So I would have liked some frank input if there were any opportunities to merge. I could see I wouldn't be the only trustee that may be interested in additional committees. I can envision someday an open data committee, even based on some of the discussions that we're having tonight, where there could be some fulsome recommendations. So I would have liked to have seen some recommendations that sort of take that overarching approach for us. I also wanted to note that, at least on my observation, the challenges for community advisory committees in being able to meet the mandate of advising to board is really a challenge in getting their chairs to be able to present to board procedurally by way of requirements that have been created around the timelines for them to provide motions, get motions approved, and have a mandate to come to board. The time lag for that can be as long as 2 months, and in a 10-month school year process, I feel that is way too long for members of the community. I also think it's just too much procedure for them to be able to digest, to get their best advice to this board. And so my personal opinion is that it's not so much how are the committees meeting that we need to look at, but it's like, how can we accelerate and facilitate the process for these community members to get advice to our committees of board? How can we reduce that time frame from 2 months to more like a period of a few weeks? And how can we reduce barriers to having them get on our agendas to present those perspectives? That would be what I would like to see out of that kind of review. I'd be happy, and I will say these two particular ones that were presented with this evening, I would be happy to move the motions. The Early Years Community Advisory Committee, while there are occasional overlaps with the committee that I sit on, which is the Community Use of Schools Advisory Committee, because of the government requirements for early years, because they operate under the same Ministry of Education, because we have unique board commitments to advance a seamless day model and to seek to include early years programming in as many schools as we possibly can within the resources that are provided. I think it is very important to have this as a standalone committee. So I would be happy to move around early years CAC. I would also be happy to move around FSLAC. However, I saw in the report the recommendation was to change the name. So I would appreciate being able to move the motion with the recommended name change. I just want to make sure I get the right name when I move that. I hope that was mostly comments, not questions, but I hope it's helpful. I don't know if staff have any responses or if we have any insight on when we might be able to get that broader picture. And thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Earhart. Just from a procedural point of view, we have 2 more speakers on the speakers list, and then perhaps we can come back to your motion. Also, it is a recommendation today, but this will be up for discussion again at the organizational meeting in November. So this is just a recommendation that's coming out of GPC. So that's one thing. And also, as staff have mentioned, things like that were recommended, like the name change, can be then looking into once we make a recommendation tonight. But I'll pass it over to staff to see if they
And thank you for the question. And through the chair, I'm going to ask Ms. Monroe to comment in particular around the timing.
Thank you, Associate Simon, through you, Chair. We have been working, Trustee Earhart, just to do just that. So within the last 3 years, you've noted a couple significant changes with CAC. So one, we started trying to align CAC meetings as much around your standing committee schedule as possible. So we've been trying to work diligently with board services to ensure that CACs get their meetings in a timely way at the end of each year. So to better align their meetings with your standing committee meetings, to provide an opportunity for CACs to be aware of your committees, to then know how they can align their schedule and their plans with your meetings. Secondly, we've also simplified the reporting. So what comes to you now from committees is not what used to be, where it used to be full meeting minutes. We've now streamlined it. You've approved that what should be coming to you is anytime they want to make a recommendation, that recommendation comes directly and comes immediately after the meeting for your next scheduled standing committee. So we've really tried to streamline that process. And lastly, that I'll speak to is we've also attempted to ensure that CACs can now report to any standing committee based on the nature and the content of their recommendation. So that was really to try to ensure that we solve the problem of it coming to, at once upon a time, PSSC, then PSSC, well, it's not for PSSC, it should have gone to GPC. We now leave it with the CAC, the senior resource person, to consult with board services about the appropriate committee to try to resolve some of those timing issues. So we've heard the feedback, and we've been trying to simplify ways to expedite that process. I'll send it back to the floor.
Okay, thanks very much. It's very helpful. I think my only piece of feedback, for what it's worth, in terms of where we could go next, is reducing the requirements for CACs to have to present motions in advance. Perhaps CACs, particularly those that are not mandated under legislation, could simply have in meeting minutes action items that are noted that could be reported back to board, rather than a motion that is approved by a full committee. Because some of the time delays I'm observing are that motions have to be drafted in time for agenda clearing for a committee, and then we're working with many advisory committee members who don't have familiarity around how motions should be crafted. And so there is time delays in them getting recommendations and action items to board through the terms of reference processes of the CACs themselves. So I feel for those that are non-statutory in nature, we may be able to be a bit softer in those to facilitate getting their best advice to the relevant board committees that could then action from there, for what it's worth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Earhart. Up next on the speakers list, we have Trustee Dawson, followed by Trustee Arts, and then Trustee Sriskandarajah. Trustee Earhart, may I pass the chair to you for some time?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, who's next on the speakers list? Alexis? And do we have someone tracking beyond that? Thank you very much. Okay, go ahead, Alexis. Trustee Dawson.
Thanks. Through the chair, I just wanted to kind of pick up on some of the comments that Trustee Earhart made. As a former community co-chair of a community advisory committee, it was very difficult to capture the fulsome discussion at these committees and bring them to board when only a recommendation is allowed to be brought. You know, not only is the process quite limiting and colonial in nature and expecting, you know, our committees that may not have a full grasp on some of our processes. I don't think that the current system is very inviting, and I don't think that it gives us a full sense of what the committees are actually doing and what they're discussing and the issues that are important to them. I much preferred the model where the community co-chair would come to the board or committee and speak to a report. So to speak to the monthly report of their committee, and that gave full insight into what the committee was doing over time. And now that we're at this juncture here where we're expected to determine the fate of these committees, I don't envy the members of this committee. I'm not a member, but as a result of the lack of report backs to us over the course of the last term, I have no idea personally how to vote on any of these things. I don't know what sorts of discussions happen at the committee level. What I do know as a former committee member and a current trustee member of a committee is that oftentimes committees are discouraged by staff from making something a motion, and quite frankly, not everything has to be a motion. But what is important is that staff does take the direction, insights, and comments from these committees and puts them to action in their work. So that is a benefit of having the committees as well, just from that, you know, staff directional piece, let alone trustees. So when we see them, the only thing we have to evaluate is what motions did they bring to us and how did they enhance our work at the board. We have absolutely no idea what's gone on at every meeting and how it has informed some of the staff decisions. And that I see to be quite a significant flaw in the way that our community advisory committees bring information to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if staff wanted to say anything following that.
Through you, Chair, I will do that. Couple comments. The first is the process that we are at now was approved by the board because there was concerns about the previous way of reporting. The previous way of reporting was after every CAC meeting, you got a full summary of what took place at that meeting and any recommendations that were coming through. What you were dealing with at that time at your PSSC, you may have 12 reports that were coming through, and the challenge was how that get processed in ways that enabled you to have the info that you needed. And so the request was that staff needed to streamline that process. So the streamlining then was the conversation about how do we get information to you in the way that would be helpful, which then led us to each CAC will submit an annual report to you. And in addition to that, an annual self-eval. So that way, those tools provided you, all trustees, the opportunity to get a sense of who the committees are, what their work is annually, but also what some of their priorities have been throughout that time to give you a sense of what they were doing. And so this is the streamlining of it was really trying to ensure that you were getting the most efficient information you needed from the committees, because the multiple reports was slowing down your process to get clarity as to, one, what was the recommendation coming before you, and what was the CAC expecting of you in terms of an action. And so it then resulted with you deciding as a board that it would be simpler and a faster and more efficient process if what you got from your committees were actually recommendations. And so that way you were very clear as to what they were advising you of, thereby enabling you to process that decision faster. That's how we ended up at this point. I think what I'm hearing this evening is that there was some preference for the previous model, and it may have had some benefits there, but I just wanted to provide some information as to how we got to this point in terms of the timely piece. Just a last comment as to how CACs are able to report and their structure. The motion creation process at a CAC is not intended to be as, I'm going to say, as tactical as it is at your standing committees. The language for recommendations coming forward or being crafted at the CAC level is not expected to be with the whereof, thou art. It is hoped that we have met enough with our CAC co-chairs to let them know that you simply just craft the recommendation based on what you've heard from the committee, and that's what needs to move forward. It doesn't have to move forward in the complexity of the language that your motions may be draft. Their recommendations could be in much simpler, clearer language that will not slow down the process in terms of getting their recommendations forward. And if that continues to be a challenge, that is something that when we get together with the CAC co-chairs, community-based co-chairs, we can have conversations around that with them in terms of simplification of drafting their recommendations at the CAC level. I'll put it back through the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually just have one more comment to that. So points well taken. I understand that the board made that decision and that, you know, maybe in practice it's not working out as we thought it might. But I think, you know, I'll just leave it with former trustee Sheila Carey Mahar once said when I was on BSAC, if it's not a motion, it doesn't exist. And I think that really rings true in this scenario. So for, you know, my fellow trustees who are on CACs, if it's not a motion, it doesn't exist. It doesn't get to board. So we don't know about the value of these committees and how they inform staff decisions. I understand there's an annual report, but that doesn't necessarily capture everything over time, nor do the community co-chairs putting together those reports understand that that's a critical piece of information for us. So if it's not a motion, it doesn't exist. And I hope that we can see more motions from CACs as a result of that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll pass the chair back to Trustee Rajagulasingham. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Earhart. Thank you, Trustee Dawson. Up next, we have Trustee Arts, followed by Trustee Sri Sukandaraja.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So I apologize because I did not say a hearty thank you for all this work when I started in my last question. And I do know that a lot of work has gone into this new process that we have, and I very much appreciate the many years of work gone into clarifying getting to a new process and being able to have a review. I'm wondering, I will put this one up front and start with it. I'm wondering if at the end of the 6 reviews that are being presented, I think the 6 that are being done this year, if we could have a secondary process that looks at overlapping mandates. This data is great to look at the individual feedback and review of the individual committees. But I know that the work that went into revising the procedure, that some of the discussions involved, how do we realign our processes? How do we do this so that CACs are working most effectively with us? And clearly, as I said, clearly some of them have issues getting quorum and that community engagement piece. And that's one question I think that would lend to, is the committee effective and should it be renewed? But as a broader group or broader piece, I'm hoping that the review piece will let us realign what committees we have as CACs, what their mandates are, where there's maybe overlap and consolidation without necessarily getting rid of them wholesale. But I think that will have to come after we have seen the reviews from the different committees. So I'm hoping there can be a secondary process where we engage in that piece of looking at overlapping mandates. One of the other questions that came up during the process to get here where we are today was whether all of the committees actually needed to be trustee committees, because some of them are very operational, and because Early Years is on the screen, Early Years is one of the committees that I've been to on and off over the years, and they do great work and they're a very effective committee. But really, it's the majority of the work is a staff and partner committee, and we have other committees like this, like the Mental Health and Wellbeing Committee, which has never become a CAC because it works effectively and it has parents and community members and staff on it, and works effectively under a different structure because most of the considerations that they take into account are operational. One of the big challenges we have with our CACs, and especially when people want to make very last minute recommendations or motions, is that then those tend to be operational. And I will say to Alexis's comment, after years of working with former trustee Sheila Carey-Mahar, a lot of the things that she wanted to bring forward from the committee were directions to staff, and that is not the role of the committee and is not the role of trustees and in that structure. So frequently the back and forth on how to make this happen was a lack of understanding of those differences between operations. So I think a more straightforward process for committees to make recommendations that doesn't have the whole onerous whereas stuff would be awesome. But I would like to see a process at the end where we can, look at our committees, realign them, and even decide maybe some of these would be better suited and more effective if they were staff partner committees than necessarily having to engage in the whole board structure, board of trustee meeting structure. Thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, Trustee Arts. Trustee Sriskandarajah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to Trustee Earhart. I think that was really helpful, having someone with some experience on the committee to speak to it. I just wanted to, sorry, I have a toddler fittingly for this topic. I just wanted to say last time around, I know we've changed the process and I understand that, but last time around, staff were much more direct in their recommendations. So they, I understand compiling the information for us, which I'm really grateful for. But I remember last time we made decisions to close, they were very direct, saying these are the rationales. And I think having a stronger staff voice on this would be really appreciated. I know they report to us, but staff are the ones that attend the meeting. So that feedback would be really helpful going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Sriskandarajah. And now we'll come back to Trustee Earhart, who had put the motion on the floor.
Thanks. I would start by moving item 1 there, that the Early Years Community Advisory Committee be reestablished at the organizational meeting in November 2024.
Perfect. And we'll need a mover. So Trustee Earhart moves that. And do we have a seconder?
Sriskandarajah.
Thank you, Trustee Sriskandarajah. And to colleagues, this is just for 5.1, Early Years Community Advisory Committee. So now we'll open the vote. Is this show of hands or e-scribe? E-scribe? And e-scribe is open.
Trustee Pay in favor.
Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Sriskandarajah in favor.
Wong in favor.
Hastings in favor. Trustee Shan? Trustee Shan, are you there? Okay, we'll mark him as absent. Trustee Hastings is in favor. He voted. And that has carried. Okay. Thank you to Associate Director Salmon and Senior Policy Advisor Gardman for the work on this. And now we'll do the same thing for 5.2, French as a Second Language Community Advisory Committee. Are there any comments or questions on this, or anyone wants to make a motion? Trustee Earhart?
Thank you. I'll make a motion. I wanted to also make a motion that this committee be reconstituted, but I wanted to move in addition that GPC recommends that the name be changed to French Student Achievement Community Advisory Committee.
Okay.
So like a point 2.
Do you mind? Oh, we're just going to get that up on the screen.
Is it okay if I just speak to it quickly?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so my understanding is in the report, and I'd have staff just verify that under question 37, outlining additional information regarding the operations of the CAC, there was a proposed update to the name for it to become French Student Achievement Community Advisory Committee. So I'm assuming the FSA CAC. This name would center, the committee's work on students and their achievement in core and immersion French programs. It removes second language, as has been done by the TDSB French department, as it is more inclusive of multilingual language learners for whom French is a third or additional language. And so I agree with that. I think it's very reasonable, and I think it would be helpful for us to move it as a committee tonight for support at org board. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Earhart. So she moves the recommendation of the name change as an amendment. Is there a seconder for the amendment?
All right. Trustee Sriskandarajah.
Okay, Trustee Sriskandarajah seconds it. And if there are any folks that wish to speak to it, they may.
Could I just get a quick question? Just to confirm through you, Madam Chair, this name change is from the committee, right? Was there consensus amongst the committee? Was there a vote? I just want to know how they arrived at the name change.
So System Superintendent Felsen?
Through the chair, yes, at their annual general meeting, it was a recommendation from the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any further questions, Trustee Sriskandarajah?
No, thank you.
Okay, so the vote is open on the amendment.
Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Trustee Pay in favor.
And Trustee Wong in favor.
Okay, trustees Wong, Pei, and Nunziata in favor. Trustee Hastings? In favor. Trustee Shan, are you there? And that has carried. And now we're back to the original motion as amended. Seeing no further comments or questions on this item, we'll open the vote. And we'll need a mover and seconder. So Trustee Earhart moved it and seconded by
Wong.
Trustee Wong. Trustee Nunziata, Trustee Pei, and Trustee Wong, how do you vote?
Wong in favor.
Pay in favor.
Nunziata in favor.
Thank you. And that has carried. Thank you to Associate Director Salmon and System Superintendent Felsen for their work on this. And finally, 5.3, Environmental Sustainability Community Advisory Committee Review Process. Are there any comments or questions on this item? Trustee Earhart?
No questions. I'm happy to move that it be reconstituted. I think we've seen that there's been some very helpful motions and work that's come out of this committee that supported board actions and the climate strategy, the climate action plan of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Earhart. We have a mover and we'll need a seconder, please.
Wong here, 100% supported, and I will second it as well.
Thank you, Trustee Wong. We'll open the vote on this item.
Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Wong in favor.
Pay in favor.
Trustee Hastings? And that has carried. Thank you to Associate Director Salmon and Senior Manager Christie for their work on this item. And that brings us to the end of staff reports. We're going to move on to reports that are here for information only. We have three procedures that are open to be discussed today. Staff will not be presenting on them, but they're here to answer any questions trustees may have. Seeing no, oh, Trustee Dawson, please go ahead.
Hi, okay, sorry, I was having a technical difficulty there. So I just had a couple of questions on the renaming and naming of schools. So the first question is, oh, that was already answered. Okay, so staff will conduct a critical review and submit a report on these names in early 2025. What does that mean? That was in the renaming section. Or sorry, in the naming section. I didn't understand what that meant at all.
Through the chair, there was a special reference committee that was formed a number of years ago that provided advice to us on content for the policy and the procedure. And they were also providing advice on school names to review to ensure that they're consistent with our equity and expectations for inclusion. The first thing we did was we revised the policy, which was approved by board last June. And then the next step was to revise the procedure. And both the policy and procedure have been updated to include a section on review of names. This is the critical review of names, both a proactive review and a reactive review. And so the advice from the special reference group to review 3 school names that they identified is part of the proactive review that we reference within the policy and the procedure. So that part of the procedure says that staff will conduct annually a review of names to ensure that they're consistent with our policy on naming and renaming. And those school names will come to the Board of Trustees for approval to begin the renaming process. So the 3 schools that were identified by the special reference group, they're going to be our first recommendation to board for schools to go through the proactive renaming process. So those 3 schools are Dundas, Ryerson, and Sir John A. Macdonald. And that critical review will begin with a report that analyzes those names and provides context and history to the trustees to consider whether the renaming process should actually begin. So that report is the next step, and it'll go to the next Planning and Priorities Committee that's available early in 2025, January most likely.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that helpful context. Ryerson is one of my schools, and I have to say that the community has been really adamant about their name change since I started as a trustee. And I have been telling them over and over that this is coming to board in October. So I'm just wondering, if we have this list of 3 names, why do we need to wait until January to get trustee approval? Like, we know the names now, so why are we waiting all the way till January? I think that's too long. I now will have to go back to the school and tell them, sorry, it's not October, it's early 2025 to even begin considering this. So why are we doing this so late?
Through the chair, we're doing it sequentially, getting the policy approved first, then the procedure in place. And the procedure does have that section on the proactive and reactive review of names. And these 3 names are part of the proactive review. We wanted the procedure to be established. And what the procedure does say is that a report will go to board to get approval to start that proactive renaming process. So that's the central office reviewing names to see if they are consistent with our principles on equity. The other approach is for schools to start the renaming process themselves, but for a school to start the renaming process, they do need to do some work initially. They have to do a poll of their students to confirm that there's majority interest in changing the name. And then it's a report to board to get approval to start the renaming process. So both approaches require a report to board to actually initiate the renaming. And the reason why they're coming after this report is we wanted to have the procedure established first.
Okay. All right. Thank you. How long is this whole process from start to finish supposed to take? Like, I know you need approvals and everything, but once the renaming process is launched, how long does it take from, formation of committee to determining the name?
Through the chair, it should be able to be completed within a school year. There is a report at the beginning to initiate the process, and then there's a report at the end to actually approve the recommended school name. And then there's a number of steps in between, forming a committee, generating lists of names for a committee to consider, shortlisting all the names to 3, polling the students to get their input on what they favor as the preferred name. So there are a number of steps in between, but it does begin with a report to board and it ends with a report to board.
Okay, thanks. And I just have to say, I really, really did appreciate how much student involvement will go into the process. I think that's really, really important that they be engaged meaningfully and that it tied to the curriculum. I really loved that part. And then my final question is just clarification around, I think it was Appendix AL. So in the marked up version, there was something about if an Indigenous name is being considered to go to the Elders Council first. I wonder if you could just sort of explain the Elders Council involvement in this entire process.
Through the chair, so if an Indigenous name is one that the committee is considering, then the chair of the committee, whether it's a superintendent, if it's a school name, or a principal, if it's a team or a special purpose area name, they would be reaching out to the Urban Indigenous Education Center or the Elders Council to get their perspective on the name that's of interest.
Okay, so we would not proactively first go to the Elders Council. It would always be initiated by this committee.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, and would it be reasonable, like, let's say a committee wanted to support having an Indigenous name but didn't know where to start, would that be an appropriate time to also go to the Elders Council?
Through the chair, the procedure is silent on that, but I think that would be a possibility.
Okay, all right, wonderful. Thank you so much. Great work.
Thank you, Trustee Dawson. Trustee Didavidas, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm actually in one of our schools at a local meeting, so apologies for the rough background. So my question, I was reading the guidelines, and just for me to understand, if I wanted to name a school after myself, for example, I'm a current sitting politician, I can't do that. I understood that. As the process gets started, are we able to name schools in the current, the revised procedures after people? What's the criteria for that? I'm not sure I saw that. I tried to look for it. I didn't find it.
Through the chair, the criteria are in the policy and the procedure. Within the procedure, they're specified in the section 6.1 guiding principles and 6.2 considerations for naming, renaming schools. So naming schools after people is a possibility. It does specify that name of a politician who's currently in office should not be considered.
So I missed that then. So if someone, an astronaut, someone that did something really worthwhile, is still around, they can be added to the list of potential names as the process goes through. That's allowable.
Through the chair, did you say a politician who's just not in office but still around?
No. I think the example I gave is an astronaut, or
an astronaut,
or a scientist, or anybody else that we think is worthwhile, or the students at a school think is worthwhile. Like a living person, not a politician. They would be someone that can go on the list.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. That astronaut could be considered.
Okay, amazing. And in terms of who can potentially come up with the names, the way I understand the procedures, the way I read them, it's really student-led. Am I correct in sort of reading it that way?
Through the chair, that's correct. The procedure is designed to be student-centered, but there are opportunities for the parents of the school to be involved in the naming of the naming and renaming of schools. The sections on teams and special purpose areas have slightly different focus. They're more focused on the students and staff rather than the parents.
Okay. And then my last question is in regards to the schools that don't meet our current or may not meet our current standard. We have 3 schools right now. Are there more schools that we're also considering adding to that review process, or has that process of initial consideration been sort of taken as far as it needs to go at this point?
Through the chair, it's planned to be an annual process, that every year a batch of schools will be identified for going through the renaming process to ensure that their names are consistent with our guiding principles on equity.
Okay. So a school right now that's named after a street, it comes out 5 years from now that it's actually named after someone that that X, Y, Z, and that no longer meets our criteria, then we would consider them then once they go through that review.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. This is ongoing work.
Ongoing work. Okay, perfect. Thank you for the clarification. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Up next, we have Trustee Earhart. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for this. And I know I have many constituents that will be excited to see the updates to this procedure. I just had a few quick questions. I was just wondering if the Elders Council had expressed comfort with the procedure and the approach to Indigenous renaming that includes them.
Through the chair, the development of this procedure involved all of senior team and executive council and directors council, and Superintendent Tanya Sink was a direct input to the procedure. So while we didn't talk directly to the Elders Council, we did have input from Tanya Sink.
Okay, thank you. I'm also, and sorry because I'm not looking at the staff member most likely to respond, and so my apologies. I'm also wondering, in terms of student governance, the procedure outlines a lot of process for students that students may need to initiate or take for changes to team names or other changes. I'm wondering what the proposed communications are with our student governance bodies and with students writ large around this procedure and how they can initiate processes under the procedure, so team name changes in particular. Thank you.
Through the chair, are you referring to student governance outside of a local school?
I was thinking student trustees, student councils, student senate, our suite of student governance within the TDSB. I hope that's helpful.
And through the chair, I think part of what we'll need to do is establish a communication plan with respect to engaging students, and certainly starting with our student trustees, because they are such strong advocates around getting this information out to communities. So I think that needs to be part of our process moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. I think what I was most excited about was student engagement in renaming processes for this. I thought that was fantastic. And as a trustee, I don't often hear from students, particularly younger students. So I thought it was great to see how younger students would be engaged in renamings when it's being contemplated for schools, for elementary schools, for example. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Earhart. Seeing no further questions or comments, we'd like to thank staff for their work on these procedures. Thank you to System Planning Officer Gowdy. And we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the written notice of motion. Folks, we've been in committee since 4:30. I'm just looking to see if people would like a break or they're good to move on. We'll move on. We'll keep going. Have the written notice of motion by Trustees Pay and Hastings, Open Data Policy. Trustee Pay, are you there?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, Madam Chair, my dear colleagues, I have the honor to introduce a motion for the immediate review of policy P0191, Open Data Policy. This policy, adopted in 2018, embodies our commitment for transparency, accountability, accessibility, and public engagement within our school board. I'm certain that these values are very important to all of us. As the Supreme Court of Canada has stated in 1997 case of Dagi versus Canada, the public's rights to government health information are designed to improve the workings of government, to make it more effective, responsive, and accountable. The public cannot hope to call to account the government that serve it without an adequate knowledge of what is going on, nor can they hope to participate in the decision-making process and contribute their talents to the information, to the formation of the policy and the legislation if that process is hidden from view. We want the Toronto citizens to be engaged with activities of this board, for whose operation they pay taxes. And for that engagement, they need access to accurate information. Without an engaged and informed public, we risk undermining the public trust that our actions are in their best interest. Open data policy is one of the tools that governments around the world, including the City of Toronto and the province of Ontario, use to support these principles. The goal of this motion is to address concerning facts about the open data policy. The policy mandates the creation and the maintenance of a comprehensive inventory of system-wide data and the data sites. This policy exists on paper, but there are clear gaps between what is on paper and what has been implemented. However, as a member of the public review, the board staff have admitted in a recent Freedom of Information request that such inventory does not exist. I'm very concerned that this key provision of a board-approved policy has not been implemented for many years. I do not understand how, without such an inventory, the staff can make informed decisions about what data sets to release under the open data policy. I am concerned about the effects of this lack of transparent governance on public trust. Public trust that, I must say, has been significantly eroded by two recent scandals: plagiarized staff report on meritocracy and grave mistakes in the alternative school lottery. I'm also concerned about what the lack of such an inventory means for data security and safe data management. In the last year, the TDSB had been subject to two dangerous data leaks, where private information about students and staff was leaked. This policy is long overdue for review. Given that the policy mandated a review in 2020, 22, and 21 year, which did not take place, I sincerely ask you, my colleague, to join Trustee Hastings and myself in requesting an immediate review for this policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Pei. Trustee Pei, the version on the screen, is this the version you're speaking to, or do you have an amended version?
Madam Chair, could you just give me a few minutes? Let me go through this one.
Sure.
Okay. May I ask the staff from Madrinka to clarify that, because I sent her the latest version. Right now, I need a.
So what you're seeing on the screen, is this the latest version you shared, Trustee Pei?
Yes, I think this one it is. Yes.
Okay. So this is the amended motion that Trustee Pei and Trustee Hastings are bringing forward. Trustee Hastings, are you okay with what you're seeing on the screen? Okay. As a seconder, do you wish to speak on the motion? Okay. Okay. The floor is open to colleagues who wish to ask questions or make comments on what they're seeing. Oh, and the director would like to speak. Interim Director Zucker, please go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair. We have reviewed the motion and really appreciate the spirit, and staff, like trustees, are committed to transparency and committed to providing information when appropriate to the public. We do have some concerns with the whereas statements, that they may not accurately reflect the significant amount of information that is available to the public. And although, and again, this is not an exhaustive list. Information is provided through board reports like our Safe and Caring Schools reports, our Student Census report, and Human Rights reports, to name a few. Financial information through board reports, financial facts, and financial statements. Our research department has a very robust process for working with universities and other scholars to provide information. There are health and safety information available online, as well as significant facilities information, including facility condition index data, renewal backlog, and facility work orders, just to name a few. We do acknowledge that we do need to do a better job of making all of this information accessible and showing the community where they can find this information. With regards to the policy, we do acknowledge that the policy review has been delayed for a number of reasons, and it can be moved up in the review cycle, but I just want to again acknowledge that we do have finite resources and that this may result in another policy scheduled to start the review this year to be moved back. I also want to remind trustees that the first phase of policy review involves a policy work plan, and that some parts of this motion could be considered as part of the work plan, and that providing this direction through this motion may be a little premature. Specifically the latter, I think it's 3 through 5, or 6, sorry, of the Part B. We will have the opportunity, and trustees will have the opportunity to provide feedback at a future GPC meeting. If this were to come in March as indicated, then at that meeting, there would be opportunity to provide feedback through the work plan. It also seems that the development of a procedure rather than a policy would address some of the points in the motion. For example, staff can prepare a procedure which outlines all of the data that will be available on the website. If we were to do this through a policy, as we continue to add additional information, the policy would continue to have to be updated, and we do see it as procedural. Staff has a few other concerns with the motion. One, there are certainly budget implications of the motion. It is likely that additional resources would be required in order to meet the spirit of the motion. In addition, MFIPA ensures that data is publicly accessible while balancing privacy and organizational risk. So we are concerned that creating a process separate from MFIPA would not allow for a fulsome review to be taken before the data is released. Staff is certainly supportive of providing guiding principles, but concerns about the quote state of the art, who determines state of the art, and just what is that definition. As drafted, it sounds like a request is being made for an almost unlimited access to our systems, and it is very concerning given the privacy and other organizational risks. We also have policies like policy P094, freedom of information and protection of privacy, which outlines how we collect, use, retain, and disclose personal information. Section 6.1 of that policy says the board will only collect, use, retain, and disclose personal information in accordance with applicable legislation. And there are a number of legislations that are attached to this policy, including the Anti-Racism Act of 2017, Data Standards for Identification and Monitoring of Systemic Racism, 2018, the Education Act, Chapter 2, the MFIPA Act, and our Ontario Student Records Guidelines. So again, I would like to acknowledge that the website has not been updated as regularly as it should be, that we need to make more data accessible while ensuring that we protect the privacy of our students, staff, and committees. And we also want to support and our communities and trustees and be as transparent as possible. So thank you through the chair.
Thank you, Director Zucker. On the speakers list next, we have Trustee Arts. Please go ahead.
Hi, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you. The movers have referenced a specific FOI and a specific response to an FOI, but I'm wondering why this, if the movers have access to these documents, and if so, why they haven't been shared with the board as part of their motion.
Through you, Madam Chair. Actually, I think the delegates, Professor Marcin Paskey, shared that documents with all the trustees before his delegation. And I can certainly share that information with Trustee Tars with that.
Because you've only, yes, so you've only quoted a line from this. So
yeah, there's
honestly,
complete.
Yeah, well, I can't use it in this format to make any decision
remember-
because it hasn't been attached here. So when, you know, if this is going forward to board, that would be needed, or I would suggest taking it out altogether. That kind of specific information is not needed to encourage a review for something. We all agree, I think, we have this policy. We agree open data is important. Many of us have long worked towards this across many organizations. But as Dr. Zucker mentioned, much of what I see on here in the Be It Resolved speaks to procedure, not to policy. Some of these are, quite a few of these are items that would change over time. For instance, the International Open Data Charter, while adopted by many organizations, was adopted in 2015. So it's almost a decade old. We don't want to lock a policy. A policy is a very rigid structure. It states our intentions. It does not state the hows and particulars of putting data on the website. So the how the data is going to go on the website, how it's going to be formatted and managed, those are important pieces. We don't have a procedure to go with this policy. And as was mentioned, those types of minutiae should live in a procedure that can be much more detailed and much more flexible. Policies are just the commitment to open data, which we have as a board. So I'd say for most of the points, these are procedural. I would like to see if this is going to be recommended by the committee or any part of this recommended to the committee. I would also like to see a recommendation to go to FBEC because this is asking for a staff member. I do have problems with the general wording. We do not direct staff as trustees. And we only have one employee, that is the director. So the request needs to be of the director to consider or to implement, to add the policy review. We have already asked staff to, and director to move up policy reviews into this year. So I think would be unfair of the committee or the board to then slap an immediately timeline on them for yet another policy this year. We have limited policy review staff. And in respect of their time, I would rather see a request for them to come back to us with a new timeline and how they would include starting this policy review within the current cycle, which is the 2024-25 school year.
Trustees, before we turn it over to Director Zucker, just a reminder, please don't speak over one another and to go through the chair. Director?
Oh, my apologies.
Thank you, and through the chair, just in support of the whereas statement, I also do not have access to Freedom of Information requests because they are private. But my understanding is that that is a line taken from a paragraph that provides a lot of additional information. So just a concern there. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Up next, we have Trustee Earhart, followed by Trustee Pei.
Thanks very much. I wanted to move amendments. I'm hearing concerns. Some of those were concerns that I also had and shared with colleagues. I did just send it just in advance of this item. So it's showing up on the screen. And happy to take comments on this. I do want to start, however, Trustee Payne, I don't always agree, but this is something we agree on. I personally believe open data is incredibly important. I can trust in the spirit in 2018 of a board that I wasn't elected to be on at that time would have been to work towards open data. I also know what has happened to the education landscape since 2018 and the funding, the active and chronic defunding and underfunding of education during this time. And so I look at this with that lens and also acknowledging that we have been living through a pandemic at the same time. And so I share the aspiration, but my understanding is that boards are not funded for this explicit purpose. And so all of this comes from the areas that we have had to cut, and we're faced with impossible choices. I've voted against our budgets, but we have, as a board, made cuts to central staff. So I'm just very cognizant of all of that when looking at this. So even though I share the ideals, I really do believe we need to be doing provincial advocacy to fund things to make them world class, because we are not being funded for this work. As important as I believe it is. So that's the lens I'm coming from. I did propose removal of the reference to MFIPA simply because it isn't something that's easily accessible for a member of public, and our board motions and records of these motions live on. So it's in that spirit, though I do appreciate, I did just recently receive by email from the delegate and want to affirm that language was indeed in writing in a letter that we just received from the delegate. So simply want to affirm that I've seen that and that is truthful. Further down, and therefore be it resolved in Part A, suggests changing the reference that staff commence immediately to that the director accelerate the policy review to the 2024-25 review cycle. It's my understanding that's in keeping with board governance in terms of who the board is empowered to direct, as well as how we frame in the governance policy committee our review cycles, which are annual. Understand that this would need to move, that in order to put this on the 2024-25 review cycle, my expectation would be when we get an updated annual review cycle, some things will have to simply move off the list because we've also advanced other items. So fully cognizant of that. Further down, I've suggested the removal at this stage of points 3, 4, 5 in Roman numerals and element C. Element C, I understand we can't direct at this time, but I do want to say that, I really agree with the spirit of all of this, and I'm really hopeful that that as this moves through board in its 5 phases, that we can work to be as ambitious as we can within the resources that we have, and would be happy to work with the original movers of this motion on advocacy motions in support of open data being one of the many areas that we as a board would benefit from additional funding to really realize our collective ambitions. I hope that's helpful, and I'm happy to take questions. And I believe Trustee Sriskandarajah would be seconding, and just thanks very much to her as well on this in case she has anything to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Earhart. Trustee Sriskandarajah, as a seconder, do you wish to share any comments?
I'll try. Let's see if I'm allowed here. I've been boss. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Just to the original movers, I think this amendment or this change doesn't replace the spirit of the motion at all. I think it's just to sort of clean up some issues that were raised by other committee members and by staff. I think it still does exactly what was originally asked, which is to move up the policy, which is to learn from where our inadequacies have been and sort of how we can rectify it. I do understand the spirit of wanting to appoint a staff member to oversee this work. I think we just get into really tricky territory when we start doing that at this stage in a process. I think that is a decision that should come through the process. as opposed to from the beginning, because I worry then that every motion in the future, people will just, want an extra staff. Who doesn't, right? But those all have financial implications that we can't necessarily see at this point until we know what work has to be done. And we need to realize, and I think we do, that this is a big task in front of us. For example, two of the things that were mentioned by the delegates, one was the optional attendance, and the other one, I forget what the issue was, but both of those issues, the data is online, right? Somebody asked, why is this not online? Our optional attendance is online. It clearly tells you where you can apply, where you can't. The problem is just our website. There's just so much on it that it's hard to navigate. And this has been an issue that has been raised. I've raised this since I joined the board, years ago. So so I do believe it's two-pronged, the concerns, that one, we do have the data, it is publicly accessible, it's just not structured in a way that it's easily accessible, and you have to navigate a website. I get a headache navigating our website, so I can only imagine the public. So, I do, to address some of staff's concerns, it's not necessarily they're trying to hide data. It's just, we have it. It is public. Sometimes it's just not in the right places, or it's not organized in a way that's easy. And then there are places where we do need data, and we need much more, greater transparency in those areas. And that is something we have been dealing with since I joined a term ago. So it's not new, and I appreciate the original movers and Trustee Earhart's work on this to clean this up, to get us to a point where we can get this done very effectively. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Sriskandarajah. Are there any other comments or questions on the motion as amended?
Madam Chair, I have some comments.
Sure, please go ahead.
The questions.
Trustee Payne.
Okay, first of all, I want to ask the staff, through you, Madam Chair, that is when this is new information, such as any information after, year 2021 was uploaded on the website, because when I'm starting proposing this motion, when I look at the website is on September 21st, 2024 this year. I didn't see very much information after, year 2021. Then miraculously, after I moved this motion last week, and then I saw some data has been uploaded on the website. So I just want to know, asking through you, Madam Chair, Madam Chair, is to the staff, when the staff actually uploaded those information lately. Can you ask them to give me a date?
Thank you. And through the chair, I'm going to ask Executive Officer Byrd to respond, please.
And through the chair, good evening, trustees. It was updated last week through the chair, Trustee Pei. When we became aware of the impending motion, we actually took a second look at our open data webpage and made sure that the links were freshened. As you pointed out, some of the links were older, I think dating back to 2018 in some cases. So we made sure to take existing data that was already on the website and just make sure that those links were updated and that we were pointing to the correct information so that it reflected current data. But again, no new information was created. It was simply adding links to that open data website that pointed to more up-to-date information that is typically included on the open data webpage.
Okay, thank you very much, Executive Officer, Byrd. My second question is, what is really open data, this policy point to? Are they just talking about raw data, like a data set, like machine readable data, or just the reports, which is loaded by the board staff? Through you, Madam Chair.
Through the chair, I'm happy to try to answer that. I think that is one thing that we need to actually consider as we move forward on if there is indeed a different policy review. But even aside from the policy, I think staff have to also determine exactly what open data would include and clearly define what that would include. I know there are some definitions within the policy, but we really have to come together to describe and to determine exactly what would be considered that. For example, FCI data, the Facility Conditioned Index data, safe drinking water data. We have others on the renewal needs backlog that are on individual school websites. We, of course, link to that. We, of course, link to that on our open data page, but that information in itself is contained on individual school websites so that parents can easily access them because they're going to their own child's school's website to look for much of this data. But to your point, I think we do have to discuss further exactly what information would be considered under open data, make sure that we have that clear definition, and then take next steps to determine what further data sets or what kind of information could potentially be added if that's something we move forward with.
Okay, thank you. Through Madam Chair, my follow-up question is about the actual policy says open format. How many data sets are in the open format, machine readable data set?
Through the chair, I'm happy to take that one. I do know that I'd defer to others if we have others available on the call, but much of the information is provided as I mentioned, on a school by school basis, available on the school website so that parents and guardians can view that information based on their child's unique school. They go to the school profile page. There's information about the renewal needs, repair backlog for that particular school, drinking water test results, the facilities condition index, so that people can, pardon me, easily access that information on the school page. We have other data, for example, whether it be the Human Rights Report, Caring and Safe Schools Report, that breaks down system data when it comes to suspensions and expulsions, for example, and the reasoning behind that. But I believe that's the extent of the level of data or the form of data that it is currently in.
Through you, Madam Chair, my following question is, this is not open format. School by school basis is not data sets. Is exactly opposite. What this policy asking is data sets. We need to provide inventory for data sets. So let me ask staff through Madam Chair, do we really have an inventory of data sets at all?
Through the chair, go ahead, Executive Officer Byrd, and I can add.
I was just going to say through the chair that my understanding is that there is not, while we have a large amount of data and information available on the TDSB website, again, we're trying to bring that more easily identifiable together on the open data webpage, but we have a large amount of data available on the TDSB website. I don't personally have a complete listing of all data available given the breadth of information that the TDSB deals with, especially considering confidentiality, privacy reasons. I don't have a complete list to offer at this point in time what data is available, although I do know that there is an incredible amount of data on the website. I don't yet have a complete list because that is something that staff would then have to look at and assess to determine what information is out there, what information could be shared. And sorry, I'll defer to the director, and my apologies for interrupting.
Thank you, and through the chair, I think what you're hearing is that we don't have a complete list of what we have data sets for. So that is something that we would take away. And as I mentioned, in the creation of a procedure, when we have that inventory, that is where it would be located. So staff, once the policy is reviewed or during that time, we'll look at creating that procedure as well. So I don't think we have the answer for you today. We do have a lot of data, and it's provided in a lot of different formats. With regards to an inventory of a complete data set or an open data set, I don't have that list available, I'm sorry.
So, through Madam Chair, I want to clarify with the staff that is, for the policy section 6.1, the board will establish and maintain an inventory of system-wide data and data sets. So, as I understand, the mandate director and the exec office board told me that we don't even have such inventories of data sets. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Through the chair, I do not know. We have an inventory. I do not know what is included in that inventory at this time.
Through Madam Chair, can anybody else answer my questions? Do we really have that inventory of system-wide data or data sets? Any inventory at all for 6 years? For 6 years.
Through the chair, we do use data on a school-by-school basis internally. It would depend on, again, which type of information is in there and how that relates to our other policies that we have in place, whether we would be providing them or not. But if we have a school-by-school in our websites, on each school website, then we would have a list of that data altogether. If we just thought that it was easier for schools, because most people, when they are looking at this information, other than researchers possibly, would be looking at it for their purposes of their own school, and they would rather not look through a large list. So I think that we have to take into account the data that we do have and how we provide this in an accessible way, in an open way, as you indicated. And I will be the first to say that we are not currently adhering completely to that policy. Thank you.
Through Madam Chair, I don't really find that the staff's answer is really satisfactory. I'm asking whether the board, following our own policy, says here, section 6.1, the board will establish and maintain an inventory of system-wide data and data sets. And then stop telling me the school-by-school, database or data. That's not this this policy about it. This policy about an inventory of system-wide data and data sets. Where is that? Do we really have it for 6 years? If we don't have it, why we don't have it? Why we're not even following our own policy? Why our policy not implemented? Through Madam Chair, respectfully, I want to ask the staff for answer for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and through the chair, there have been some obstacles to implementation, as you indicated in part of your motion. And so that would be something that we would be bringing back as requested by this motion. I don't have that information available today, but again, I am acknowledging that we have not fully implemented this policy.
Okay, through Madam Chair, may I follow up a question? What obstacles?
Through the chair.
Sorry, excuse me, point of order. I think it's the staff will keep running my clock. I want a 20 seconds back.
Through the chair, we will be taking on that review.
Point of order, sorry for the interruption. Madam Chair, the staff are accidentally running my chair, running down my clock when I finish my talking. So I want a 20 seconds back to my clock. Thank you.
Trustee Pei, I don't think anyone's doing it intentionally, but we're also at committee. So if your time does run out, you're welcome to come back on the list.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
So thank you, and through the chair, as I indicated, we do plan on, if this motion is passed, providing that in a report as requested by this motion. But I will say that there are many obstacles that were, including the pandemic, including other policies that came forward that moved this policy down the line, including, I think, a communications policy that was asked for this one to be paused while we reviewed that policy. And there were a number of other obstacles as well, including, I'll be honest, resources. This is a very time-consuming process and requirement. And when we have limited resources, there are some things that unfortunately don't get done in the manner that we would want to be able to do them, and especially in accordance with policy. So unfortunately, this is one of them. We will look at how we can prioritize keeping this up to date and how we will implement the procedure. But again, right now, the resources that we have in place make it very challenging for us to be able to stay on top of this.
Okay, so Madam Chair, I understand the pandemic was one of the obstacles. I appreciate that. But that's policy what proved like 2018. Pandemic was starting like 2020. So for 2 years we could not do anything, and then like we're supposed to do a review, we couldn't do anything. And then the pandemic already passed. In my mind, 3 years, and we still couldn't do anything. So I don't understand. Besides pandemic, what obstacles really are? Through Madam Chair, I just want to ask the staff would clarify to me. What are those obstacles? Just help me understand. Thank you very much.
So through the chair, again, we would have to take on that review to provide a more fulsome answer. And I think that is what is being requested by this motion. So we will be happy to report back on it. But again, resources, and during the pandemic, as everybody here knows, operations were not as usual. And so efforts of staff were diverted in other areas in order to support our students and our staff through the pandemic. It also meant that we weren't doing business as usual in the boardroom. So although this motion was passed, I think in June of 2018, and it would have been, the policy would have been up for a review within 2 years, that did not happen because of the pandemic. And then all policies fell behind. And we know that when we brought forward the backlog that we have in policy review, we changed the timeline or the frequency that we review policies from 4 years to 5 years in order to try to get on top of that backlog and to stay up. We also know that there are other policies that have come forward, including cell phone policy, including the student interest policy, including the excursion policy, which all start to push back the policies that are on the review schedule. So I know we're talking about two different things. It's why didn't this policy get reviewed, and then why didn't the policy get implemented? And I would say that the pandemic was an obstacle for both of those things. And from an operational perspective, I wasn't here in 2018 or up until 2022. So I'm unsure of why it wasn't implemented at that time. I know that a lot of information was provided on the website at that time. And we are still providing a lot of information, although not in this open format, through many, many different ways, and including freedom of information requests. And also there's a significant amount of information on our website, other school websites, or through board reports.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Director. Through Madam Chair, I think as manager mentioned that policy was approved by the board in June 2018. I just want to clarify with that date. Is that correct? June 2018?
Through the chair, that's my understanding from the policy of when it was approved, yes.
Can the through Madam Chair, is really, because one search of web is like the policy actually January 2018.
Through the chair.
So we have 2 years.
Sorry, through the chair, I just want, this is Leo Lapon, Associate Director Leo Lapon. I just wanted to double check. Is your question about whether the policy was passed in January 2018 or June versus June 2018? I just wanted to make sure I heard correctly.
That's right.
On the actual, through the chair, on the actual policy P91, it has adopted June 20th, 2018 and affected on the same day.
Okay, so basically for like 20 months, before the pandemic, we could not do anything regarding implementing this policy. So for what opcos during that time? So through you, Madam Chair.
So through the chair, when we do this review of the obstacles, we will certainly go back to any staff or that were here at that time and determine what was implemented, because the website does exist and there is a substantial amount of data that is included on that website, and it would have been uploaded during that time. But again, we will, through the B2, a review of staff experiences and obstacles to implement the policy in 2018 to 24, we will be happy to bring back that information at a later date.
Okay, through Madam Chair, may I make an amendment for this amendment? Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Yeah, through the chair. What is your amendment, Trustee Pei?
I want to put back, based on the staff answer, I want to put back item B3 back.
Okay, and do you have a seconder?
Trustee Hastings,
Give me one moment, Trustee Pei.
thank you.
Trustee Pei, so based on procedure, because your original motion had B3, and trustees Earhart and Sri Skandaraja in their amendment have removed that, we would have to vote on this amendment first. Once we see the result, if it passes, if it doesn't pass, and when we come back to the original motion, then we can discuss it. But right now, we have to discuss the motion as amended. If you wish to make a different amendment, you can do that, but we can't use anything from the original motion.
Okay, understand. Thank you, Madam Chair. Is like I have another question to ask, and so I think the staff mentioned there's a lot of information on our website. So can staff really mention point out which single data set really on our website besides all the reports? I mean, single data sets. That's what is policy talking about.
Through the chair, I can try to answer that. I do know that right now we have, obviously there's the open data web page that has links to many of these pieces. I guess it comes down to the data set question of data versus data set. I think we have definitely provided data on the website, on the open data website, and other websites. For example, and as referenced before, Caring and Safe Schools annual report, Human Rights annual report, other board reports, financial facts. Financial facts, I would say, is data set, very data heavy at the very least, but I would say that's data set. They are available on different pages within the TDSB website, not to mention data that has been provided as part of board reports over the years. But there is certainly data available on the TDSB website. I think right now we're discussing, if I may, data versus data set, but I can confirm there is much data available on the open data website and on various other pages on the TDSB website.
Madam Chair, I still have more questions to follow up, but I run out of time. Can you put me back to the list? Thank you.
Sure. Seeing no further questions or comments from other trustees, you can continue, Trustee.
Oh, sorry, I had put my name on the list.
Oh, my apologies. Please go ahead, Trustee Arts.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So I think this discussion really points to why this discussion needs to happen as part of a review and not pre-review, and also a lot of these questions of why a procedure is needed. Again, a policy review is just going to be broad statements about our commitment to open data, which we have. It does not then detail the bits and pieces about what kind of data gets posted to a website. Those are procedural pieces. So we really, what I'm hearing is we really need a procedure to be developed, and a lot of this, what kind of data is posted, and the myriads of different forms of data that are important to our community, and then how it's managed, where it's going to live, what's going to be linked there. All of the data that's being asked for tonight, EQAO data, our census data, things like that, do live on our website. They don't all live in the same place. And then lots of them are very important. And to what staff said, and what's the comments, well, I agree there are places where machine data is important and raw data sets are important. Researchers or people who would legitimately want access to those data sets in order to analyze them have a clear mechanism to do that through the research department, and it's always been there. We collaborate as a board with many different agencies. I go to meetings and seminars all the time where researchers and different organizations talk about the data that the data sets that they've gotten from the TDSB that help inform then their policy discussions, research best practices, whether those be from city, university, community organizations. So we do have a process for people to access machine data, complying with the ethics needed for a lot of the data that we house. Things like was brought up, and Trustee Thishkandar just mentioned this earlier. Things like what's housed on our Find Our School websites and which ones are opened. Those could be posted in a CSV format or a spreadsheet format that could be mined by a machine. However, that is not useful to our communities. We also have to house data in ways that are useful to the communities we serve, and that's parents. And as was mentioned, there could be centralized information, or it could be on local school websites. Again, a central list or table system to help direct people might be useful. I shared earlier the City of Vancouver's open data page. If you go there and explore it, you'll see that some of the data sets, some of what they share in terms of open data and information is reports and analyses. Others are spreadsheets of things like addresses and stuff that is not confidential data. But our end users, for the most part, are not going to find, CSV comma separated data sets useful in determining what they want to know about their school, their community, or schools in general. I would say the lead testing is an open data set that we publish that is very relevant to both broader organizations that serve the TDSB and individual families, and is a format that they can then go look up their schools or different sets of schools in neighborhoods and access. A great example of where a numbered or like a table is not going to work, early reading data. This is something that the Right to Read report from the Ontario Human Rights Commission asks for, is for systems to collect data. But the ministry has 6 or more. We have 6 that we approve within the TDSB, early reading assessments that teachers can use. And it is an agreement between teachers and the province on which one they're going to use. So it is impossible for us to collect a system-wide data set on that early reading data at this point, because it comes from 6 different data sets. We can, however, report to the public, for their child's school, are children meeting learning expectations. So we need multiple forms of data for the multiple communities that we serve. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Arts. Trustee Earhart, please go ahead.
Hi, and just quickly, through the chair, directed in response to some of the questions that Trustee Pay had asked, staff may not be in a position to respond to this, but I would offer that I can think of something that took place after June 2018 that would have impacted a school board's ability to implement items that are resource intensive, and that would be a provincial election that took place June 7th, 2018, and the fallout after that, including the budget 2019, which started the cuts that we are still having to deal with today, that are continually dismantling everything I love about public education. And so I simply wanted to make that point because I've heard it asked several times what could have happened after June of 2018 that would challenge things like open data. I would also invite that around that time there may have also been changes, I can't say, but I could assume there may have been changes to how the province was structuring and operating and how it was allowing for information to be shared, including for things that remain under its responsibility like capital funding. And so I'd invite that to also be something for other trustees to consider, that some of this may not be this board directly, but could be a result of provincial change in direction that took place starting in June 2018 before the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Earhart. And now we're back to round two of the speakers list. Trustee Pay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't understand why trustee try to make some excuse for the staff. The staffers really should know that what the obstacles, not that trustee just, assume some kind of, make some like basically, assumptions for why we're not implement this policy. So I want to read it really loud for the policy to everyone.
Trustee Pay?
Madam Chair.
I
Sorry.
just want to clarify that, we're here all for the same reason. And when we're speaking about one another, especially our colleagues, so just please be mindful of what you're sharing. Everyone has different opinions, but let's make sure we respect that.
Okay, Madam Chair, I do respect that. Okay. So Madam Chair, I want to raise this policy, really loudly, clearly to all the trustees, so trustees can understand what it is policy about. The board, section 6.2, the board will publish online and make available to the public data that is within the custody and control of the TDSB while protecting personal privacy and ensuring security and confidentiality. That's our board policy. So we're required to make all the data online available to the public. But now I hear that is we should have a legitimate reason before we can give that information to the public. So instead, the public can really access all this data online by themselves. But then we had asked them to maybe submit some kind of freedom information form to request those data. I think that's really against the policy. The policy said clearly that we need a public online and make available to the public data that's within the custody and control TDSB while protecting personal privacy and ensuring security confidentiality. So my next question is to Madam Chair. Is there difficulty for the staff to implement this policy, section 6.2?
So through the chair, I would say that the difficulty is, again, the resources that are available, but we will take it away and we will provide, if it is not doable with the resources that we have, we will let trustees know that, and through the budget process, maybe requesting additional staff in order to be adhering to policy.
Okay, soon, Madam Chair, I'm a rookie trustee. I a little bit get lost here. So through you, maybe I can ask the staff, when the policy was approved, why the staff not raise the question regarding financial difficulties?
Through the chair, I can't speak to when the policy was approved in 2018, but again, maybe through our review of staff experiences and obstacles that we would be able to provide that information at a later date through the report.
Okay, all right. My follow-up question through Madam Chair. So what is really expenditure of resources for us to send the people regarding their FOI request? Do the staff have a number of hours and the cost regarding to the board?
Through the chair, we can also consider that type of information as part of the review that's being requested. Thank you.
So my follow-up question is, through Madam Chair, I think the staff really should look into that. How much we spend to provide FOI requests to the public, rather than we spend, on that amount of financial burden on our providing and creating an inventory of data set. Okay, my next question would be regarding the information we put on website. I asked a question, but unfortunately the staff didn't give me a clear answer. I'm just asking the question again through Madam Chair. Are those data sets or the reports we put on website?
Through the chair, they are not complete data sets, they are links to the data. So if somebody were to look at every single school website, they would have a complete data set, but it is not provided in that format currently.
But, okay, through Madam Chair, would that against this policy? We ask the parents, okay, we have a policy that we're going to provide information on one website, on one data set, but now I'm going to direct you to individual schools to looking for that information.
Through the chair, as I indicated, we are currently not following the policy to its fullest extent. So that is something that we will take away as well. But we are providing, we believe, the information that our families are looking for when they're looking at their individual students. And as Trustee Arts indicated, we do have a process for researchers or people that want to work with the data to work through our research department. And Senior Manager David Cameron is online, and maybe he would like to speak about that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Director Stuker. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Yeah, we have an ongoing and quite lively data request process that works with researchers, scholars, faculties, anywhere from 10 to 20 requests a year. Usually we work very carefully with researchers and scholars to figure out what questions they're asking and what things we can provide given confidentiality, identity, community consent, things like that are also part of certain data sets. So it's an ongoing thing, and it works. We use that instead of the FOI process to circumvent some of the red tape around that and to build a better relationship with folks that are studying public education.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair, I just have a question for the research department. What's the research department role in terms of providing an inventory of data set and implementing this policy? Why for 6 years, the research department have not come up with any set of data by implementing this policy?
Is that me, or is it, do you want me to respond to that?
That's right. Through Madam Chair, I'm asking research department the questions. Yes.
Okay. This isn't we don't manage this particular policy. This comes through communications. we house lots of different data sets. We use a lot of different data sets. We work with IT and SIS and PowerSchool stuff for databases for a variety of different reasons. There's a research strategy, Trustee Pei, that I'd welcome you to get on. I'm happy to send you the links to that in terms of what we do and how we work with data. Part of it is working with researchers and scholars, and part of it is working with, we have a pretty robust ethics process as well when people want to do actually research work inside of our work, and we use a lot of analytical data services to inform the board and in some instances to inform the community. But in terms of an open data source that would be a portal into all the different kinds of databases and data that that the TDSB currently has, that's not part of any of the research mandates that we work under.
Okay, so Madam Chair, I just want to ask, what kind of inventory database the research department really have?
Are you asking what kind of databases we have?
Yeah, I'm asking what kind of inventory of a database, data sets you have.
We have there's a lot of data that we work with other divisions and other parts of the TDSB to use in our analysis, in our research work. Our data, the only data sources that we currently steward are the student census and the staff census databases. And I think staff census actually is within people and culture and legal services, but certainly the student census is a database that we steward, but it's probably our only database that we steward. We also steward any kind of survey work we do. As an example, we went out during the pandemic, we went out and we surveyed around 3 million participants in terms of parents and students, and on a revolving basis. That data is data we steward too. But for by and large, we are data users in the board as well in terms of analysis and work with indicators and the different ways we report and work with staff. The reports that you see, Trustee Pei, that have data in them, and most reports do, are part of the stuff we work with. But we don't own those databases, we use them.
So, Madam Chair, I think that's not really misunderstood my question. I'm asking data sets. I heard about data, but I'm asking data sets. I want to know whether we have intra-system-wide data and data sets. I'm not asking data.
Through the chair, if I can suggest that as part of the review, if the motion does pass as amended, as part of this review and report back in March of 2025, that some part of the review also talk about the available data sets. I think it's a little challenging to be able to talk about all the data sets available without really doing a thorough reflection on what we do have, so that trustees can then make a more informed decision and debate in March when that report comes back. Thank you.
Okay, so Madam Chair, may I ask staff who's really in charge of creating this inventory of the database or data sets?
So through the chair, currently we have communications who is taking the lead on updating them, and they would be gathering them from different areas of the board. So to Associate Director Pond's point, I think we need to take this away. We weren't prepared to provide an inventory of data sets that we have today. I think you're hearing that we use many data sets and that we use it for research purposes, and we provide them when appropriate to other researchers and scholars based on a very robust process. So what we will need to do from there is to determine what can be included on our open data website. So we do have work to do. As I indicated, we are not currently following the policy. We will look into what the obstacles were and look at how we could address those obstacles in order to be able to adhere to the policy. And we will also undertake, if directed, the review of the policy, and the work plan will address many of these concerns.
Thank you, Madam Director. Through you, Madam Chair, my last question. I want to ask through you is, to the Madam Director. That is creating inventory of the system-wide database is crucial for implementing this policy. If so, what is release time going to be for creating such, database?
Sorry, how much time will it take us to create the inventory? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's right, Madam Director. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm not sure at this time, Trustee Pay, maybe through Trustee Weekly, we can give an update as to when that would be reasonable for us to be able to bring that information together. I do recognize through information that I had is that there was a committee of staff that were constituted when this policy was passed in order to look at the types of data that was being provided. So it may be time to reconstitute that committee, and then that would be able to allow us to look into how long it would take to pull that together and the types of data sets that we have, and that we would be making available publicly.
Thank you, Madam Director. Through Madam Chair, I just have a follow-up question regarding, Madam Director answer is, so I think is setting up a deadline for creating such inventory or release deadline, do some research. I think certainly we like a research. We don't even have complete data set at all. So that's really very, very concerning to me. I think if we need to have a creation, the inventory of this, data size, we need to have deadline. So I really hope the staff can consider to my motion 2.3. Thank you very much. That's the reason I view against this amendment, because I think it's all the elements in my original motion really pointed to the the right direction. Make sure we implement the policy and show the public we're transparent and accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. So I just wanted to address something. As you see through the board reports that are presented, through the information that's available on the school websites, and through the work that our research department does, there is a significant amount of data that is generated and used by the board. The fact that I can't tell you what our inventory is right now is, I apologize, I don't have it at my fingertips. That doesn't mean that they don't exist. And I just wanted to make sure that we all understand that there's a significant amount of data that is used. It's integral in the decisions that we make to support our students and our families. Thank you, through the chair.
Thank you, Madam Director.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Pay. Seeing no further comments or questions on this amendment, we're going to open the vote.
Trustee Pay against.
Sriskandarajah in favor.
Trustee Earhart in favor.
Trustee Nunziata against.
Trustee Wong in favor.
checking. The vote should be up in just a few minutes. We're just working with the governance team. Trustee Nunziata, you're against, correct?
Yes.
Trustee Hastings? Okay. And that is carried, and now we're back to the original motion as amended. So we'll need a mover and seconder. Oh,
Trustee Pei.
Trustee Pei, are you moving it?
Moving what? My motion?
Sorry, give us one moment, Trustee Pei. We're just consulting with governance. Trustee Pei, did you want to move the amended motion, or did you want to speak on the original motion as amended now?
So basically, sorry, Madam Chair, I just want to have a clarification. What is actually the motion is
So now
we're voting right now.
Trustee
Yeah.
Earhart and Trustee Sriskanda Raja's amendment has passed. So now this is the motion as amended that we're now going to vote on. Yes.
Okay, so this is a motion we're going to vote on, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, you know, I want to make my closing speech anyway, even though this is not the motion I intended to table, but that's okay. May I, Madam Chair?
You may speak to the motion. Please go ahead.
My dear colleagues, you know, as we consider this motion, I want to reiterate our shared commitment to transparency, accessibility, and the public engagement within our schools board. There are not just lofty ideals. They are the foundation of a functioning democracy, ensuring that our actions are truly in the best interest of the public reserve. The goal of this motion is simple: to hold ourselves accountable to the promise laid out in the policy P019, open data. This policy, which embodies our commitment to open government principles, has unfortunately been neglected, with key elements seemingly ignored. Let's be clear. This policy is long overdue for review. It mandates a review within the first 2 years of the implementation and subsequently every 4 years. Yet, here we are. Years passed that the initial deadlines, with the policy languishing and its key provisions unfulfilled. The lack of a comprehensive inventory system-wide data as mandated by this policy is particularly concerning. Without this inventory, how can we possibly make informed decisions about data release, ensure data security, or even understand the scope of the information we hold. This motion calls for an immediate review of open data policy. It urges the staff to examine the obstacles to implementation, establish clear guidelines for data publication, and create a release plan for making our data publicly available. So we own the public transparency and accountability. So let's do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Pei. Seeing no further comments or questions on this motion as amended, we'll open the vote. Trustee Earhart and Trustee Sriskandarajah, are you okay to second or move and second? Yeah. Okay. Trustee Sriskandarajah, are you there?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and now we'll open the vote on this item.
In favor, Sriskandarajah.
Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Trustee Pei in favor.
Wong in favor.
Trustee Rajagopal Singh, I'm in favor. And that has carried. Finally, we're here at adjournment. If I can get a mover and seconder. Trustee Hastings and seconded by
Trustee Pei.
Trustee Pei. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
against? Okay, thank you everyone for your work today, and thanks to staff for the reports. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.